This is a recording, an event that took place April 22nd, 2020. It's a partial recording, the first 30 minutes of which was lost. Began with land acknowledgement by Cheryl McKnight, followed by a report moderated by Robert DeWitz of labor, including Vernita Randall from SEIU 2015 on home care and nursing care workers, Robin Ellis, a palliative care nurse, and the first part of Matt Hart from UFCW Local 324.
We're dealing with the general public every single day, healthy, sick, it doesn't matter. And so we're constantly coming into contact with them. And we've had, unfortunately, it's had a tragic impact. So far with UFCW, so far and since the coronavirus really hit the United States, we've already had 30 UFCW members die. And that's both from retail as well as meatpacking industry. We certainly know in Colorado recently there was a huge spread of the coronavirus in one of the meatpacking plants over there. But not just UFCW members, 40 grocery employees so far have died. So that means both union and non-union. And I think that's something to take into account. Just today, there was an employee at Belmont Star in Massachusetts that was reported to have died, who was a grocery store worker. About less than 7 days ago, a gentleman named Sonny Quitlong, who worked at the Puget Sound Safeway, died due to coronavirus. And we're seeing, it seems like every few days we're seeing another account of a grocery worker, another account of a retail worker dying because of the work that they're doing. And so, but one of the things that we're seeing is that we're seeing that every industry that the UFCW represents, they each have their own sort of distinct and unique problems. And the UFCW is certainly working on trying to resolve or at least address those issues. With drug and retail, as I said, our members are dealing with the general public. We're constantly being put at risk. One of the things that we've found in Southern California is that when the epidemic began to spread in Southern California, our employers were slow to respond. It took at least 2 weeks for them to actually start putting up plexiglass. When it came to PPE, personal protective equipment, not only were the employers slow to provide those things, but certain employers, for example, Stater Brothers, for the first several weeks until it was really mandated by the state, was taking the position that employees shouldn't be wearing masks. And the reason why they shouldn't be wearing masks is because it may create a perception in the customer's eyes that these individuals are sick. So putting themselves at risk, direct risk in terms of possible contamination. A lot of the employers were not providing even gloves or masks. Now they're starting to do that more. They are now starting to provide that, at least in the grocery stores. But most of the time, from reports that we're hearing, a lot of the employees are finding that supplies are low in the stores. So the only way that they're really able to have consistent PPE is if they try to find that themselves, which is, I'm sure as most of you know, is a slow and almost seemingly impossible task, is to search and find personal protective equipment, especially things like masks and gloves. It's not like something that you can go and order online. Even if you do, the turnaround is certainly slow. So that's certainly one of the issues that we have. In terms of retail, part of the problem as well is that those folks that work in retail, oftentimes they're kind of considered, I don't want to say invisible, but we've gotten lots of complaints in terms of the customer base actually coming into, or at least not honoring the 6-foot rule when it comes to employees. They may be doing that with customers, but they're certainly not doing that with employees, which increases the likelihood of coming into contact with the coronavirus. So we've been working with, as much as possible, with the governor, Gavin Newsom, with Orange County and LA County, to implement regulations for the grocery stores for retail, drug and retail. So we've been working on that. We actually have had some progress in LA. Orange County, their recommendations in terms of what regulations exist within the stores. But it's simply that it's a recommendation, not a regulation. And so we're currently trying to add pressure to the Orange County, the supervisors in Orange County to actually try to push for these things to be mandated. One of the areas that we've seen a large spread of coronavirus has also been in our meatpacking industry. So the International has been working to add pressure to the USDA to implement several different rules, such as prioritizing essential workers for testing and considering meatpacking as essential workers. So ensuring that there's a priority there in terms of testing for them. Access to personal protective equipment, halting online speed waivers. So that's basically increasing productivity at a faster pace. Mandating social distancing when possible, and isolating workers when they show symptoms or they're testing for COVID virus. If you've never worked in the meatpacking industry, they're literally, or even seen meatpacking, oftentimes the workers are standing right next to each other. So the idea of social distancing isn't a reality in meatpacking. It simply isn't. Even in the warehouses, the very idea of social distancing cannot happen because oftentimes workers deal with standards. And so they oftentimes have to get in each other's spaces as a way to grab the product and move forward, because if they don't, they're not going to hit their standards, so they can be disciplined for not actually working efficiently. So we're running into these problems in the various different industries that we have of employers. Just the very nature of the work itself doesn't make it conducive to the idea of social distancing, and whether it's retail, meatpacking, or the warehouses. One of the things that actually took place recently, which was really surprising because it actually came from an industry that normally isn't very militant, is actually in one of our Kaiser facilities. We actually had a wildcat strike that was organized by, or at least assisted by the union representative, and it was over the issue of coronavirus. When an individual was infected, the employers were slow to sterilize and clean the facility and clean the places where the person was infected with the coronavirus. So basically, the workers organized a walkout, and until the whole area was sterilized, the workers refused to go back into their workplace.
Thank you, Matt. We do need to keep moving.
Go ahead.
A few other participants. Really appreciate everything you had to say and share. And our next panelist is going to be Cristal Herrera. She's an IBEW electrician working with the working with the LA Fed and the LA Young Workers.
Hey guys, super excited to be here. 5 minutes, timer set. Let's do this. Okay, so basically, I'm with IBW Local 11, Los Angeles, union electrician. Also representing Los Angeles Young Workers through the LA Federation of Labor, and Local 11's Young Workers Group, which is called Renew. I'm the president of that one. And we're basically, in construction, it's a little tricky. A lot of the things that we have been conditioned to think are acceptable and maybe okay, like running out of soap and water sometimes. Like during a crisis like this, it's absolutely not okay. And like to come into work the day after the stay-at-home order was issued and we're completely out of soap and water, that was a little scary. Also, the disinformation that was going around our safety meetings, where basically the contractor was telling us, we really don't have anything to worry about. This is only concerning for older people, which we all know is absolutely not true. We lost a member who was a relatively young man, relatively healthy. So we know that was an absolute lie, pretty much. And also having us try to practice social distancing on the job site, like the previous speaker was mentioning. Sometimes it's impossible in construction. I mean, you have iron workers that have to kind of try to put up large pieces of metal and need a worker on each side. You can't necessarily do that by yourself. I think with electrical, some stuff can be done that way, but it would require more work planning, which sometimes I don't know if the contractor is willing to do. Also, I kind of had to wrestle with the choice of choosing to stay home. I didn't feel safe on the job site. So, and, with the culture of construction and society, like a lot of the times our value is tied to production and how much, we can do. So a lot of construction workers, I'm getting calls on a daily basis, are having a hard time making that choice of whether they should go to work or not. But I think our local, we implemented a supplemental unemployment fund, which we did have before, and they just made it better right before the crisis. So basically, if a worker is out of work, they can apply to tap into this fund and get a couple extra $100 a week on top of unemployment, which is absolutely helping workers make the decision to stay safer at home. Because for us, if we don't work, we don't get paid. We actually don't have sick pay. We are trying to work on maybe starting a campaign where we can work on getting that back, maybe at our next contract negotiation or during an allocation meeting of some sort. But that's something that we definitely want to work on. Also, pretty much we have some women out there that are pretty awesome and have been pushing for more PPE on the job site. One worker at the stadium organized pretty much her entire crew to walk off. A member had contracted the virus, and they were trying to let everybody know or tell everybody that it was safe. But they can say it, but at the same time, when people are getting sick around you, you don't necessarily feel it. So they went ahead and made the choice to stay safer at home. Also right here, you see there's a picture of those iron workers that were putting up that piece of metal there. And I mean, that's pretty much it. Just us trying to figure out, what construction is, considered essential and what's not. And to me, building a football stadium or, luxury condos, I don't think that's necessarily worth putting our members' lives at risk. But then again, it's a personal choice for each member to make if they, want to choose to go to work or not. But I think a lot of people are choosing to make the right choice and stay home. And I think the contractors have tightened up on safety a little more in the last few weeks, but it's absolutely as a reaction to members walking off the job. Like, it's not out of the kindness of their own heart. It's not because they value us as people, right? It's strictly because they're like, holy crap, we're not going to have enough people to finish this thing. We have to do something. So, excuse me. So, 5 minutes is it for me, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Cristal. Our next panelist is Milly Trevino Salceda. She is the Executive Director of Alianza Nacional de Campesinas. Milly, are you on the call?
Yes. Actually, I have a name, Marisol Salcedo. I don't know why I ended up getting that name when I zoomed in.
I think we fixed it. No, I guess
no.
I'll try that again.
I'm the one that's right here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's fine. Marisol is great. Anyway, she's one of our staff members, which is great. I'm here, and I want to thank Vivian for reaching out to us with Alianza to see who could have a conversation here about farm workers. I represent a national alliance of farm-working women, and we have 15 organizations, groups that represent farm workers, and the members are the women that are part of that. And so it's millions of farm workers that we are representing. And we know that one of the reasons why we're here today is to bring visibility to the millions of farm workers, including some 700,000 women, campesinas, who most of their lives remain invisible. So it's great. I'm very thankful for being here so that we can bring this to be highlighted. And it's about making sure we're talking about how important it is to support the workers who are putting food on our tables. I mean, we're the ones that we're planting, we're working the plant, and we're making sure that we harvest so that they can go to the supermarket. And I think that we all have something connected with each other, and it's so important that we keep sharing how what is going on, and having these conversations, because the majority of the time we're so isolated with each other that we just don't know. We just know that we do we're the ones that, as I said, we're working out there in the fields, in the packing houses, in the nurseries, and all these other places, and a lot of people don't have an idea where do all these vegetables and fruits and nuts and all this come from. They don't, and it's so ironic, but they only get to see them in the supermarket, the majority of the ones that don't know how all this works. But I wanted to share with you that we have the problem. We do have the problem very, very hard from before, even way before the crisis, the COVID crisis started, where companies, in terms of health and safety, they were not providing restrooms. They're not providing water and soap to wash your hands. So what do you think is happening right now? They're not taking the time to do all this. They're not. So because we're so invisible, we're so away from everything, it's very easy for companies. I'm not saying all the companies, but many companies that are creating all these issues. And of course, I'm gonna say the same thing as what's going on with the other brothers and sisters in the other industries. Our farm workers are also dying, but we can't, because we're so invisible, we can't get the numbers in terms of how many are sick and how many are dying. It's that bad. It's that bad. We're so isolated. We're so away from everything. It's so hard. And from, in terms of, if we're talking about pharmaco women, we have to learn that pharmaco women since many years back, and this is when I was working as a teenager and young adult in the fields, we had to hide ourselves in terms of putting bandanas or clothes, larger clothes, to not be sexually harassed. And if I was sexually harassed, and I'm very open and I say my whatever, it has to do with all the taboos and being blamed for who we are, in terms of being women. Oh, you asked for it. This is why you're having all this. There's very little research on health. And there's companies prefer to hire labor contractors. Why? So it's much easier for them to not care for what happens in terms of the legal issues that they have to go by because they're not complying. There's California, very, very ironic. California has most of the where farm workers, they are covered under the industrial relations in terms of the Agricultural Labor Relations Board. But you know what? If we would not be doing all this work, all the several company organizations that are doing all the mobilizing here in California, the monitoring and making sure that the enforcement is happening, workers would not know their rights. And it's so ironic because the agencies are not doing their work. We have been doing if we have we have the problems here in California. So just imagine all the other states that are not, because we're not part of the Fair Labor Standards Act since 1938. There's no workman's compensation. There's no other kinds of security for farm workers. And you can see here in the slides how workers are asked to do their work. Is there any social distancing there? There's not. This is why workers are getting sick, and this is on a daily basis. And workers are going to have to decide every single day if they have to, if they can choose or not. Sometimes they can't even choose. They have to go to work, because if they're not going to go to work, they might be told, okay, that's fine, but you're not going to get a job the next season. And that's our work goes by seasons. And some workers get to work only 6 months out of the whole year. Some workers only get to work 8 months, some only 3 months. So the campaigns that we have been mobilizing is, yes, we're not given protective gear, much less, as I said, we're not given water, soap, and everything else that we need to wash our hands. We're being told to do that, but we're not provided any of that. So the women decided to do. You can see in the pictures that they're doing the sewing the mask, getting and delivering them to the families, including working with food banks and trying to make sure that our farm worker community are getting their some of their share. But it's only where we are. It's only where of course we're in 11 states, but there's how many states? And there's agriculture everywhere. And so we mobilize, but then we're also running risks in terms of doing all this, doing all this work. And we prefer to do that so that people can get what they need. Women, when the season's off, right now it's off for many workers. But when it's on, and here in California, the seasons are going to start. If right now workers are dying, when the seasons are not that hard, that there's not that many workers, imagine what's going to happen during the summer. It's going to get worse. And this is so terrible. I mean, it's so, I really thank Vivian for inviting us to be part of this. There's just so much health insurance. We don't. The majority of the workers don't have health insurance. Why? Because if you don't have protection, well, you can't organize. You cannot organize in other states. You can't. And here, even if the UFW is around, the UFW doesn't have the what they used to have before in terms of the many contracts that they used to have. I mean, what does that mean? Only very few can organize. Only very few can complain. If you start complaining, what happens? You're going to get fired. So at least I wanted to share that, and thank you. There's so much to share here, but I just hope people can help us by going to our website, which is Alianza Nacional de Campesinas, and please try to learn about what our 15 organizations, we have them named there, and if you push the button in each one of the organizations, you're going to go to their directly to their website, and or you can also help us donate so we can provide Alianza members some support, because everybody's doing it for free, because we don't have money to do any of this work, but it's because of necessity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Millie. Our next panelist is Shannen Maas. She's a organizer with Emerging Workers.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Setting my timer for 5 minutes. Hi, yeah, my name is Shannen Maas. I am an organizer with the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, but for the purposes of this conversation, I'm speaking as an individual and not as a representative of the IWW, but just for some context about where I'm coming from as an organizer. So in order to not make myself redundant, we have been experiencing a lot of the same issues with whoa, sorry, my screen changed and it threw me off. We've been experiencing a lot of the same issues as a lot of the other union representatives have discussed earlier in the panel. Workers not having access to like soap and water and things like that, social distancing not being enforced and things like that. When people approach us generally, they're usually kind of union shopping. They'll contact the SEIU, they'll contact UFCW, they'll contact us and kind of see what union is going to work best for them. And one of the things that we have really been trying to focus on while we're getting this influx of inquiries currently is encouraging workers, no matter what union they decide to go with, to build their own set of grievances and organize on their own terms, and not just go with what the industry standard is. Like, workers should be deciding what the industry standard is from my perspective. We have been dealing with a lot of hot shops, and for those who are not aware of what hot shops are, that's when a group of workers comes to a union and they're pre-agitated, and usually a large percentage of the workers in the shop are agitated and ready to take action, or action has already been taken to address grievances in the workplace. So we've been dealing with a lot of hot shops, and what we've been trying to do is redirect the energy that people are bringing to us. They're coming to us saying, okay, we have this many people in the shop who are like ready to strike. And while striking can be a really wonderful and effective thing to do, it's not the first plan of action you want to take. You want to really make sure that you have that shop floor power and that you're able to pull off a strike successfully before you actually try to do that. And redirecting the energy to workers to take a different first action than a strike, and build to that if it's necessary. But there are lots of things in between being ready to unionize and going on strike that you can cover before you go on strike, because if you go on strike and you don't have the shop floor power to make it effective, workers have shot themselves in the foot for what their recourse is beyond that. So another thing that we're kind of dealing with is, and by we, I mean me individually as an organizer, some of our shops are feeling really invigorated by this. They are seeing now more than ever, it's a good time to be focusing on taking collective action. And some workers are feeling really dejected, and it's been really difficult to have entire shops of non-essential workers, non-essential in quotations, as we know, all workers are essential. To have these entire shops that we've been working with full of non-essential workers be laid off after they've taken collective action in the past, and for them to not go through this like psychological phenomenon of thinking like, well, if I would have just kept my head down and not said anything, maybe the decision to lay off the entire shop wouldn't have happened. So there's been a lot of going back and forth between like trying to redirect the energy on the invigorated shops and trying to bolster the dejected shops, and just making sure everyone is channeling their energy where it needs to be and not going too far or giving up. And I think I'm at 5 minutes, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannen. Our next and final panelist is Johnny Harris, a retiree coordinator with the National Association of Letter Carriers. Johnny, are you on the call?
Johnny was in earlier. I don't know if he's still on the call or not. I'm going to put up his slide just so that we can all see.
Johnny, are you there?
Well, in case we get him back in a few minutes, I'm just going to say it's you know, we see our letter carriers every day. They're taking enormous risks working with the public and also, you know, dealing with issues of social distancing and PPE themselves. One of the things that Johnny was going to speak about is the privatization plan of, you know, the conservatives in this country to try to privatize the Postal Service, which will wreak havoc on the employees of the Postal Service, but also all of the customers. Imagine trying to vote by mail without the post office. He's also, you know, informed me that the Postal Service is one of the probably the only government agency that has to pre-fund all of its retirees. So that meant that they had to put out billions of dollars and take it out of their budget ahead of time, which is unheard of. You know, plus they've put a lot of people on temporary, and, you know, with changes, the postal office, you know, market plan is different now too. And they've done a lot to try to make sure that they can, you know, create an important service, which we all use, despite email, etc.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, good, Johnny. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was muted. I had to figure out how to unmute myself.
Okay, great. Thank you for
Hello, all.
showing up. Please go ahead.
Hello to everyone.
Hello.
I don't know if you guys can see me or not. I can't see you. I'm on my phone. But as Vivian was saying, we as the Postal Service, we have issues just like everyone else. And I can relate to the issues that were shared by the other unions, especially concerning the protection from this virus that's going around. It's important that when we work, that we work safely. One of the reasons that OSHA is in existence is to ensure that we have safety on the jobs. And a lot of the employers seem to like neglect that one aspect, because if you don't have a healthy workforce, you can't be productive. And at the Postal Service, we try to do that. And as Vivian was saying, one of the issues that we have is, for some reason, the powers that be feels that it would be best to have a private post office, a post office that does not service everyone. We service 160 million homes each and every day, homes and businesses. And we see ourselves as being a vital part of the American fabric because we make sure that seniors, rural areas, veterans, and small businesses are taken care of. And we are under the auspices of Congress. So therefore, we have to always lobby Congress to make sure that we're not taken out of the fray, we're not privatized, we are continue to be a viable force within the communities. We are constantly fighting to keep 6-day delivery. We are constantly fighting to keep door-to-door delivery, because think, and during this pandemic, if you everyone had to walk down to the corner of the block to retrieve their mail, that would cause exposure to the virus unintentionally. You can stay in your home and receive your mail and just go to your mailbox and get it. And that's what we want to continue. We want to continue to be able to deliver your mail to your door, especially medications for the elderly and for those who receive medication by mail, which the pharmacies, I'm a member of Kaiser, and they encourage you to use their mail delivery service during this pandemic to receive your mail. Now, we as the post office, we need, in these stimulus packages that's coming up, we need them to allocate $25 billion to keep us afloat, because contrary to popular beliefs, we are not subsidized by taxpayers' money. We are like a quasi government entity. We're not subsidized by taxpayers' money. We generate our own revenue through our products, the selling of stamps, or delivering of packages and parcels and so forth. So we, like everyone else, have been affected by this downturn in the economy where the monies aren't coming in. So we need Congress to allocate $25 billion on our behalf. We also need them to put money or create a fund that will help us become part of those who will be receiving hazardous pay. Because, as you know, in New York, where the hotspot was concerning this epidemic, we lost quite a few carriers, and we lost quite a lot of revenue because of the way that New York is configured. So we have to have monies to help us to continue to operate on a level that is profitable to the nation. Like I said, we service everyone. We don't make any exceptions to who you are or what community you live in. We try to service all communities alike. But if the post office is privatized, you will not have that. The affluent communities will be serviced, and the less affluent communities will not be serviced. We all need the mail. So I implore you to contact your congressional people. You can call the number 202-224-3121, and you can connect to your senator or your representative. Once you give your zip code, they'll connect you to the person that you need to talk to. And that way you can tell them that you want all of these things to take place concerning the Postal Service. Like I said, equal treatment for postal employees, and make sure that the monies that we get is not a conditional loan, but it's allocated just like they are allocating money to the small businesses. We have 600,000 employees, so therefore, if they are getting $10 million, we should get at least an amount to equal to that to sustain us and to keep us going. So I would ask for your assistance in contacting your congressional person. And also, the importance of the post office is highlighted because on the second Saturday in May of every year, we do a food drive.
Johnny,
right here in LA, we have.
Thank you so much for everything that you shared, and your experience is much appreciated. However, we do need to transition to the next segment of the event for the community panel.
Oh, okay. We've run out of time. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
And Johnny, if you send me that phone number, I'll share it in the chat box with everybody.
Okay, will do.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you for having me.
So I'm going to introduce our next moderator, Jorge Cabrera. He's going to be moderating the community panel from 12 to 1. Thank you so much for allowing me to assist in the labor panel.
Ooh, go Robert. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, awesome. Thanks for that. Like Robert said, my name is Jorge Cabrera, and I'm delighted and very privileged to be helping moderate the panel here for the community. Before we begin, I would like to give a shout out to everybody who has participated so far. Thank you so much to all the moderators and everybody who put this together. And of course, all the participants. I apologize. I do have a little bit of problems with the connectivity, so you don't see my face. I would try it again. I'm on my phone. But without further ado, just a little quick, myself, I am a community organizer as well as a labor organizer, and I've been privileged to be having working in these two fields for over 12 years. And a lot of that time has also been helping organize the fair, which is a great event. So without further ado, let me transition into the list of participants. And thanks beforehand to everybody who's there. And so we could start off with Jessica Jimenez, please, from the Human Services Association. The mic is all yours.
Hello?
Yes. Hi.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope everybody's well and safe. Just want to introduce myself really quickly. My name is Jessica Jimenez. I'm currently working at Human Services Association. So we work, provide a lot of services to clients, throughout the entire age span. So we currently, one of our biggest contracts here is working with victims of domestic violence. So it's through our domestic violence supportive services program, which is based on CalWORK's eligible participants. So we also provide services to victims of domestic violence through our CAPIT program, which is our child abuse prevention program, and our victims of crime. So with all of this going on, we have seen a spike in risk. So for all of our clients, we are essential workers, so we're, our agency is still operating. We're, trying our best to continue services for our clients so that they, continue to remain safe and, well at home. But with victims of domestic violence, it is, a lot much harder with the safe at home order. They're more at risk, they're kind of forced to isolate at home with the abuser, so it makes it much harder. Currently, one of my experiences with a client that I have, she's currently in a domestic violence situation, so it's, kind of tough having to do, things or kind of change the modality of our treatment, but, we're just trying our best and checking in with them as much as we can. We primarily work with the Hispanic community. So I know, there can be a lot of barriers, but, we're just trying our best to make sure that they're safe by checking in on them more often now than before, even 3 times a week, and, reminding them about the services that are still out there in the community. I know that, the domestic violence hotline is still available and clients can still call if they need any assistance. I know also that if calling 211 can also connect them with services and support in their area, legal services, and 911, they're still responding to domestic violence calls and issuing emergency protective orders. So it's a lot of reminding them about, the resources that are still out there. Because I know right now they're feeling a lot more isolated. And I've seen a lot more, of them feeling more hopeless and helpless during these times. So I know all agencies that are, just like Human Services Association, I know we're all working very hard, to try to continue services for our clients so that, they at least have that weekly support and, they don't feel as isolated, especially during these times.
All right. Thank you very much, Jessica. I think that's an excellent point. What happens when the mandatory lockdown goes in and the relationship that people had to go into once that happens. Thank you so much for everything on that. We're going to take questions and comments till the end. So right now we're going to continue moving the panel. And then the next speaker is Miss Alexandra Su. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name. I'm an immigrant, so sometimes I do that. And she represents the Korean Immigrant Workers Alliance here in K-Town. It's all yours, Ms. Alexandra. Are you there?
I'm going to ask Robert or Andi if you could look at the list of people and see if Alexandra is on mute and unmute her, please. In the meantime, I am showing you her slide. Alexandra is the executive director of the Korean Immigrant Workers Alliance, and they're doing amazing things. One of within the community, they're dealing with workers who may not have a chance to form a union, who are also working for affordable housing and for basic living conditions. They're dealing with working against deportation, unfair deportation of their community members, and they're also one of the leaders in Healthy LA, which is a large coalition throughout LA County, and you can see the issues that they're considering and calling for, including a strong moratorium on convictions, rent forgiveness, a freeze on residential commercial rent and utility bill increases, and more. Can I ask if anyone has been able to discover if Alexandra is on? Why don't we go? You don't see her. Okay. Why don't we go to the next speaker and we'll come back to Alexandra if she gets on.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for that, Dr. Price, Vivian. Let's go ahead and move on to Ms. Veronica Wilson from the Labor Network for Sustainability. Are you on, Ms. Veronica?
Let's see.
Let's check it out. Just 1 second, please.
I am coming in, zooming in. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for the delay.
No worries. For joining.
I don't know if I can share a screen, but this is great. Your screen is great. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the Labor Network for Sustainability does, and how we are stepping up, thank you, for essential workers in the COVID-19 crisis. But first, I want to let you know that it's a privilege to be on the call with you. I am a guest on Tonga land here in Los Angeles, organizing for the Labor Network for Sustainability. It's a national organization founded by a steelworker, and the executive director is Indigenous Chamorro of Guam, the island of Guam. So it's a unique way of looking at what communities, and especially labor and the labor movement face in what we are now facing, which is a pandemic. But that's not the only crisis. We have pre-existing crises, as you are well aware, that are laid bare by the current health emergency, and that is our economic disparity. Our workers who are invisible suddenly are put in a position of life or death, going to work and or saving their own lives. And we really wanted to put into the conversation, if there's time to have one, what the possibilities are for mobilizing together and staying in unity, which is one of our top priorities at the moment. And we, at Labor Network for Sustainability, our tagline is making a living on a living planet. But what we're seeing now is that in the COVID-19 crisis, it's really important for not only the labor movement to work together in unity, but also to work with community and environmental justice organizations. And that's exactly what Labor Network for Sustainability does. We bring together these social movements, and now it's a time where we have to have all hands on deck. And mainly our objective, short and long term, is to build strength into our labor climate movement. Trying to keep it short and hoping that Alexandra has come back on the line. I'll close it there. And
she is on the line, so when you please just finish your thought.
I'll send it off. Yeah. What I'll do is I'll put in the chat the Labor Network for Sustainability website. Any individual can join. It's a member-based organization, and I'll take questions if we have time in discussion. Check. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Okay, I was muted and I could not unmute from my own phone. So this is Alexandra Shah. I'm with the Koreatown Immigrant Workers Alliance, KIWA, and I'm delighted to be here. KIWA is also part of Healthy LA, which is a coalition of hundreds of organizations. So what I'll do really quickly is tell you a little bit about KIWA, how that connects to Healthy LA, and then close with how this ties into a bigger call to action for all of us. So KIWA is a worker center. We've been around for over 25 years, working to organize and build the leadership of immigrant workers. We're multiracial and multi-ethnic. And we work in many industries, especially restaurant and retail. And, you know, already immigrant workers who are facing a lot of wage theft, exploitation in the workplace. And with this pandemic, we have seen so many of our members just lose all their income overnight. Because many of our members are undocumented, they're not eligible for any of the federal relief. And many of them were not able to pay rent in April, will not be able to pay rent in May, and a lot of them have told us they actually are completely out of money for food. They're not only supporting themselves, but also family members. So they're in the most dire situation. We were really happy to hear about the governor's relief fund for undocumented workers, but we also recognize that it's only one drop. It's only going to provide $500 to about 10% of the undocumented workers in the state. And while we welcome it, it's just not enough. So what do we need to do? We need to call for rent forgiveness, because that's where most of the money that workers make goes. We need to call for rent forgiveness. We need to change our relationships with the bank and the real estate industry in order to address this crisis, because no amount of aid or no donations or relief funds are going to possibly be able to meet the huge need that workers have. And in another really important thing, and that work is part of the work of Healthy LA. So Kiwa is part of a coalition of over 300 organizations. We're also working at the state level because we need to find ways to actually make it possible for people to survive. It's not going to work to say you have a grace period and then you still have to pay back all the rent from the time period when you weren't working. Workers were already living paycheck to paycheck, and they will not be able to pay back the rent later. So we really need to create a mechanism for rent forgiveness, and that is one of the many things that Healthy LA is advocating for, including the eviction moratorium. They're working with city officials, county officials who are also working really hard. And I urge you to check out their website. It's healthyla.org. You can sign up to receive notifications and get involved in that work. What I wanted to say in closing is that, you know, all of us are trying to figure out ways to survive this crisis. And even at Kiwa, you know, we don't usually do this type of work, but we are distributing food, we're distributing direct economic assistance, in addition to doing a lot of leadership development and organizing. We're training our members on Zoom. We're holding 3 trilingual meetings on Zoom. And we're building workers' analysis around what this moment is. So that's a really, really key thing. It's not just the food and the aid, it is also, we need to organize so that this kind of situation does not happen again. And, you know, I know that this is Earth Day, and we're thinking a lot about the environment. I think this pandemic shows us more than ever that our environment, our lives, our people are all connected, and we cannot just take care of one part of the economy, one part of the environment, or one part of our society, because we are all connected together and our fates are linked. That's what the environmental movement teaches us, and we can see that more clearly than ever. As we exit the crisis, we need to build back stronger. And it is not about recovery or going back to where we were, because where we were was totally unsustainable. Where we were is what got us into this horrible situation in the first place. Where we were was people without health care, people without adequate income, people without adequate housing. And we need to change that. We don't want a recovery. We want to rebuild. And as we do that, the environmental movement teaches us there is an alternative. There are other ways to do it. Much of the economy has been put on pause. And as we exit, we've got to find ways to rebuild better and stronger. So that's what I'll close with for now. And thank you so much. Please check out kiwa.org or healthyla.org.
Great. Thank you so much for that extremely helpful knowledge and all that, and enlightening what Kiwa is doing, also the Healthy LA. So thanks again. Glad you made it on. Let's see. Moving on to the next speaker is Mr. Carlos Aguilar from the Coalition for Economic Survival. The mic is all yours. Mr. Carlos?
Do you see me? Can you hear me?
It's a little faint.
Try speaking up a little bit more.
Oh, that's no problem for an organizer.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure being here in this collective space with such.
It's still, you're still a little bit low. Maybe you can get closer to your screen or your mic, or maybe you can raise the volume on your computer.
Super duper close. Let me see if I can.
Once again, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much. We're all learning this technology as we go.
That's right.
All right. Is that better, or
we can hear you? Just make sure you are close.
All right. All right. Up close and personal it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you for having me here, and it's nice to share space with all of you. It's we're all allies and in this struggle in these very difficult times. So it's a pleasure being here and sharing the space. I'm the director of organizing for the Coalition for Economic Survival. We are a tenants' rights organization that's been working in the community since 1973, organizing tenants in Los Angeles to bring positive change to their buildings and their city and secure rights to healthy, safe, and affordable housing. So a lot of the work that we do is focused on protecting rent control, combating slum housing conditions, eradicating negative housing issues that lead to poisonings or lead poisoning, especially in children, and also working to stopping unjust evictions and displacement, as well as preserving our affordable housing. So I'll give a little background to what is going on right now before I get into the tenants' rights during COVID-19 emergency, right? So right now, just to get a better understanding, about 40% of households in LA County are spending more than 30% of their income on rent, or were up until this point, right? And about 25% of the nation's renters are paying more than 50% of their income on rent. And that translates into, just now in April, they did a study that about 31% of renters nationwide were not able to pay their full rent, or were only able to pay partial rent in April. And we are waiting for the big one to hit on May, right? Because it's, as businesses have been shutting down, there is no income, and very few folks are able to weather that storm and have extra cash on hand. I think not many people have more than $500 or even $500 as a reserve fund to protect themselves. So that is what's going on for us as what we see on the ground and what we're most concerned about. And there have been several efforts in the with our legislative officials trying to address some of these concerns that we are all bringing up collectively through various ways, individually or collective efforts, like coming together in like joining Healthy LA Coalition. But traditionally, eviction process has been fairly simple, right? You are unable to pay the rent, you get a 3-day notice. Then you have, if you don't pay the rent, you get a summons, you have to answer, then you go to court, and then it starts the whole eviction process. So there's been efforts to curtail that and at least stop that temporarily. There's been some eviction orders mandated from the state to the city, the county, that have added temporary protections for tenants. We've had a long fight to have rent deferral referment. So right now in the city of LA and in the county, we have a 12-month repayment plan that's been allowed. There's the reason for non-payment that has been accepted has been COVID-19 related reasons. It prohibits no-fault evictions in the city and the county. That was just recently approved also. That means, the landlord can't kick you out because they just want the unit and there's no other protections for you. Prohibits other type of of evictions, such as if you have a relative coming to your unit because there's nowhere else to go, or you're caring for someone who's sick or elderly, or you're caring for their pets, or because your kids are home. Now there's more noise, so according to the landlord, you're creating a nuisance. Those are not eviction offenses anymore. And there's been a suspension on late fees and interest charges on folks, and they can't collect those later. So these are efforts that have worked to gain at least some sort of balance or some stability for our community, but we continue the efforts and continue the fight. One good thing, additional good thing, is that even the courts have reluctantly decided to participate and realize the severity of the situation. So they're no longer taking landlord summons. They're no longer processing landlord complaints for evictions and ordering summons.
Gotcha.
Trial courts are canceled. The sheriff has suspended vacate orders. So these things are helping out, but there's need to do more. We have through our Healthy LA Coalition to do more work on eviction moratoriums, responsible banking, to tie any banking efforts with assistance, mortgage and rent relief, rent freeze for everyone, not just folks who have certain protections under rent control, and rent and mortgage forgiveness for communities will go a long way in helping everyone.
Got it. Thank you so much for all that information. Obviously, the housing, one of the primary concerns in this chaos with the lack of income for a lot of people. So thanks a lot for that information, Mr. Carlos. Moving on to the next speaker is Yesenia Fernandez from East Yards. She's a member and a part of a board of directors, East Yards Committee for Environmental Justice. Ms. Yesenia, are you on?
Yes, actually it's East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice, and I'm not sure, Vivian, if you're gonna let me share my screen.
Sorry about that. Yes, there's some, so thanks for the correction.
Yeah, that's okay. Just trying to get my slides up.
So
yeah, and it's good to hear from a couple of folks that are actually partner organizations with our team. I've been part of East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice since about 2007, which is when we first started. We started actually as a 3 people out of the trunk of the car, and we went from a collective to a nonprofit. We've got offices in the City of Commerce and in Long Beach, storefronts, and committee members, or rather community members who are part of East Yard. And we also have memberships in East LA and Linwood. A lot of the folks from Carson actually go to our Long Beach offices, and that's our team there. We do have a flat structure and we operate on consensus, so it's completely an intergenerational grassroots organization. Our members basically steer our work. This is one example of something that happened recently in Carson, and our members really wanted to have a direct action, and so that's what you see there. In addition to direct action, we've got multiple programs and campaigns, including youth leadership, a research collective where we work with undergrads to prep them to go into master's program. The research has actually been used to change policy in some cities. We have Cosecha Colectiva, which we have essentially community gardens in members' homes, and we all share the food. And these are a couple of the programs and campaigns that we are involved with. One of the most critical ones that we're working on right now is this collaboration with Occidental College to really research the water drinkability in public spaces. This Ride on All Roads is a youth-led program. Our youth wanted to do these ride-alongs through our community so that folks could see the different impacts. So we are very much community-based. Again, our members decide what work we engage in. And you might have heard of the Exide battery plant in Vernon and the cleanup associated with that. Our organization was instrumental. Our youth was instrumental in getting about $178 million to be part of the cleanup. So now that we are in this space where we can't come together as community physically, we've had to really reinvent what the work looks like. And something that we're doing weekly are these Toxic Tuesdays, where we highlight community organizations and specifically community issues, and we have these conversations on Instagram. Every Tuesday is when we have these talks. Next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about water in partnership with, again, some of our partner organizations like the Sacred Places Institute. They have a program just about the water and the native connection to the water and how to really reclaim it in a way. And so this talk will be at 2 p.m. next Tuesday. So every Tuesday, our team has been putting together these panels to continue to work with the community and uplift the voices of the different programs that are really fighting for our communities. We are also, working with our community members to support them in their struggle to not only to move beyond just not having them evicted, etc., but also being mindful about what's going to happen when 3 months from now they're going to be 3 months behind in rent, and they're going to be expected to pay this. And so that's one of the campaigns that our team is connecting with different organizations to really push and uplift. So in terms of calls for our work, the work that we're doing now in this reality and this shift is to really support these campaigns because this, as a couple of people said, whatever this is going to look like when we open back up, it's going to have lasting impacts on a lot of our communities. So what East Yard is doing is really focusing on mitigating those impacts and supporting our community members beyond the time of this shelter-in-place order. How we're doing it is just like we're talking right now via Zoom. So we do have membership meetings. The next membership meetings, we had some in April, we'll have some in May. We have about 40 to 50 people. It's been really successful in terms of getting our members to get on Zoom. We've been doing like tutorials. Our team is calling members individually to show them how to connect so that they're able to be part of the conversation. And then in this way, we're hearing what their needs are. And so daily, our team is connecting with our members, and we're hearing a lot of food insecurity, as you all know, a lot of issues with some tenant issues, and really trying to meet the needs of our members as they come up. And so we've developed the process to hear from the members in that way in addition to pushing rent moratoriums and continuing to uplift some of the organizations that are supporting the work, the environmental justice work. So we'll open for some questions when you're ready, Vivian, and thank you for having us speak today.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yes, incredible. So thanks for sharing all that wealth of knowledge and incredible work again from the trenches, absolutely. And let's go, and I believe that does it for all the panelists. And so I think this is correct me if I'm wrong, Vivian, I think this is the time to do the Q&A and comments.
Let's say if we've had really great speakers from the first panel, some of them are still on, as well as the second panel, and a lot of questions have been posed, especially seeing how many of our union members are also community members, and a lot of we're sharing many of the same problems, and what we're trying to do is find campaigns, people who are representing us, ways that we can join and do something about the situations that we face. So I'd like to ask you, Jorge, maybe you're on the phone, so it might be hard for you to see if people have any questions, right? You can't see the chat.
I could see the chat, I just don't know exactly how far, if I'm catching everything.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Does anybody want to pose a question right now?
Yes, they could do that, or they could raise their hands. I just don't see the hand raise.
Okay. Well,
I see a question from Alex.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Alex Alvarado asks, why does privatization hurt these types of services? Wouldn't privatization help make the post office more efficient? So that's directed towards the gentleman who was talking about the postal office.
Well, Johnny is not on the call anymore, but I'll speak briefly to that. Is privatization does mean for profit. And if you take a look, for example, at how much it costs to send a UPS, or a FedEx, it costs a lot more than I think it's now 47 cents for a first-class mail that is going to get there in a few days. That's a problem. And for many people to spend more money, to also find ways to deliver things. Again, looking at the example of voting by mail, how much would it cost to send everybody in the United States who's registered to vote a vote by mail request, and then have people mail their absentee ballots in? To say nothing of other items that are really necessary. We have the idea that private business operates more efficiently, but if we can look around at our society and see just how much profit is being made by the corporations while the employees are not getting their wages raised. The for-profit model claims that it's efficient, but in many ways it isn't. It doesn't serve everybody, and it doesn't serve everybody well. Maybe somebody else would like to chime in as well.
One of the things that I foresee is that if one bad example of that is Amazon, how anti-union it is, right? And it's overtaking a lot of the work that the shipping that the postal service used to take, and the horrible working conditions, and how much Mr. Bezos is hoarding in terms of wealth and unequal distribution. So that's one of the things that could be a side effect of that.
Right. Another point is just that the post office, as Johnny pointed out, serves everybody, no matter where they are in the United States or in the world, really. They would depend on other postal services, but you can't get service in many parts of the United States.
Right. I think I saw Mr. Chase's hand.
Yeah, hi. I actually had a question for Robin, the RN, but I'm not sure she's still here. So I'll put my hand down.
Gotcha. If she comes back on, or if she's on or was on mute, then we'll come back to that. Anybody else? I see Ms. Deborah.
Yes.
This is Ada.
How are you? One, I just wanted to say how much I'm enjoying this and how interesting it is and what great work you all are doing. I just also wanted to say on the post office, part of this is, I think you're probably all aware of this, but the efforts by the Republicans to disenfranchise people. And one thing that I think a lot of people are pushing for is to get vote in by mail. Now, if, of course, the mail postal service isn't working, then that's not going to be a possibility. So I don't know. For me, it's both the post office, and it's so important in everybody being able to get mail and send it. But I think it's also taken on another meaning this year. And I just wanted to add that to what Vivian had said so eloquently. Thank you.
I can't figure out how to raise
Hello, this is...
Go ahead, Vernita.
Okay, great. I just want to know something on a personal level. The other night we had a staff that was killed by her domestic partner, her and her daughter. And we've been having calls like yesterday and today. I want to know if there's any kind of resources that we can have to be a support system to the family. And then also our staff that had relationships with her. Not sure if the young lady's still on the call.
That was Jessica Jimenez, and I know that she was
Yeah, right.
She was at work and had to go back to work. But you could let me just go back to her slide, and I think I have some information on her that I'll send it to you. I'll text it to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and our heart goes out to your membership and your staff. That just must be an incredibly horrible thing to happen.
Absolutely.
Yes,
condolences. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so funny, again, thinking about how we're trying to connect over this technology. And we had such wonderful speakers already. And if we were together, we would be able to see each other and chat with each other. And there are restrictions in this kind of technology. And I think one of the things that, we're finding out are the benefits, right? That sometimes you can meet together where you couldn't before. You weren't able to drive across town or fly across the country, and you can use this Zoom technology to meet. But on the other hand, the human contact of being in the same room and of being able to see each other, take the time to talk to one another is very difficult. We have meeting rooms. We could go into little rooms and try to talk with one another. But let me ask you, how do people found this kind of technology useful in, we're going to be talking about teaching in the next panel, but in their organizing? Yesenia, you've talked about using this technology. Maybe you could address that question.
And just real quick, after that, Lisette and Rachel, they have raised their hands too.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, as I mentioned, our organization is specifically about building community, and that means coming together, we eat together, we, decide together as a community, whatever campaigns or or issues we're going to take on. So this has been definitely a challenge to revision how we can still do that work. It's obviously, as you mentioned, not the same as being able to be in each other's energy in that sense, physically. But what we have found is with our team in particular, they're able to connect a lot more. We're able to actually be like more connected in a sense via these vehicles. Both in like Cosecha Colectiva, where you actually using the post office to send each other seeds and stuff that we're growing. So we're continuing the work by using these methods, and we have had some success, but it's still not it's never going to be enough to just have this like the screen time. But, we have found that in some ways we're connecting more, we're reaching out more through Zoom and Instagram and Facebook, actually.
Right on, taking advantage of technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, thank you for that. So next on the queue is Lisette. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right.
No, that's fine. Hi, I just wanted to respond to the person who was asking about domestic violence support. That person can call 211 for LA DPSS services. So it links in 211 and just explain what it is that they need, whether they need shelter information or, some immediate emergency services. And right now, during this particular time, as we see a rise in incidences because everybody's having to shelter in place, that's one of the main key resources and components. So they are having the call center open 24 hours a day, and they can someone can actually get a live person to get the support that they need regarding domestic violence.
Thank you.
Got it. You said 211, right?
Yeah, that's correct. 211.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Next speaker on the queue is Rachel.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to also respond. It's in the chat, but just in case the woman who spoke or anyone else isn't looking at that. I heard recently Garcetti say that 911 calls can be texted, and that's specifically for emergencies. If someone is afraid or unable to be able to speak into a phone, they can text for emergency calls. I think that's a great service.
Wow, I think that is great. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. I see it on the chat now. Sorry I missed it earlier, but this is pretty good, actually. Well, thanks for sharing. I don't see any other hands unless I'm missing anything. I don't know if there's anybody like waving on the computer screen that wants to speak and hasn't or commented.
Carlos.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the comments on and that Vivian started to bring out. What are the challenges of community organizers during this time? Although there are some benefits to new technology, which is why cast a wider net. It doesn't really replace that face-to-face individual contact, because that's really where we, as tenant organizers and community organizers, that connection that we create is the connection that can stand the test of time. Is when we call them to action, when things are going tough, when we need to stick together. If we're doing a solidarity action or some if you're in labor organizing, a strike, it's that individual one-on-one relationship that you've created that is sometimes difficult to translate via technology. And also, we have to recognize that, at least for us, the communities that we work with don't always have access to this technology. Some barely have enough to to get food on the table. They might not be able to have their phone line active and current, because that's just not a necessity sometimes. When you have to feed yourself and your family. So technology challenges and access to technology is a burden to some of the folks that we reach out to, and we're trying to figure out how to best reach them through other means.
Great. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Anybody else? I'm sorry if I'm missing anything. I'm on my phone.
I was just gonna add a couple of things because I did get a question on chat that was sent to me privately. The one is where we started to do like the being able to go to some of our members' homes, the ones that we know don't have a phone or anything like that, but still practice that social distance, like not actually go into their homes, but ask in that way. So there's been some of that. We recently did an action also to uplift the collaboration between ICE and our communities, because that's like an additional layer. I'm sure some of you heard some of their tactics, knowing that folks were sheltered at home. ICE has really been going into homes and uprooting families, really. And so we've been able to do that, just like, bringing caravans of cars together, to officials, locations. So that's another way that we've been able to maintain the work. And then just finally, the question that I got asked is about pollutants, organizations, some of the policy that has been protecting us that we've been fighting for. As you might have heard, the EPA and actually South Coast Air Quality Management have kind of changed their restrictions, made things more flexible under the guise of supporting essential businesses. So a lot of what we're seeing right now is some of the restrictions that we fought for the environmental protections start to be attacked, because this is one of those times where it's like they make that argument, right? These people, we need to support these essential businesses, et cetera. And so we're seeing a lot of that as well. And that's a question that I got asked on chat.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing that up. We didn't see it, so great. Thanks for that. And just moving on to the next question, we did get a question from Carlos, and it has to do with how unions are dealing with the loss of membership because of COVID-19, and specifically the home care, healthcare, janitorial / service sectors. So does anybody want to take a stab at that? I'm sorry, this is from Armando.
I don't know if Matt is still on the line, or Vernita.
I'm still on the line.
Jorge, would you repeat the question, please?
Yes, absolutely. So
or even Armando can, but sorry,
Sure.
Go ahead, Jorge.
No worries, that's totally fine. Yeah. How are unions dealing with membership loss being caused by the COVID-19 environment? I am thinking of home health care, janitorial, restaurant, and service workers.
How we're handling it is like through our wellness calls. We'll call, we're checking on them. We also are passing out PPE supplies. We do through text with links We have a call every 2 weeks. We have a town hall call where we reach out to everyone, and they have an opportunity to either be a part, participate, whether in an action. If they want to, they'll be asked if they want to sign up for membership. We are doing tape-a-call, where we're reaching out to members, doing tape-a-call, and just mostly just we're really focusing on communication with the members, checking, doing wellness checks, making sure they're okay, and and then doing the ask as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Renita. Is Matt on the call?
I don't see him, but Jorge, okay. Would you like to respond to it with your union experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So having right now SCIU, United Healthcare Workers West, UHW, some of the things that we're doing is that we are keeping track of what's happening policy-wise through the state and federal levels, and we understand that there was a rescue package to the hospitals, and so therefore we're taking the stance that there's absolutely no layoffs and no reduction in forces at this moment, and so we're negotiating with all the hospitals that we represent. We're also making sure that there is no losses to individuals' pay in case they're booted off of work, because a lot of the elective surgeries have been canceled and a lot of the outpatient services as well. But it's not fair for our members to suffer loss of pay when there is a lot of money to go around. So we're negotiating that. And for the most part, and the other things that we're doing is we're making sure that we have paid sick days and that we also have childcare for our members, as well as enough PPE for everybody. And the communication that we're using for a lot of that, since we're not allowed to go into the hospital, is we're organizing from home, and we do that through phone, text message, Zoom, as well as Hustle, which is a great script. We really like that, and it gets the word out really well.
Would you explain what Hustle is?
Yes, Hustle is it's an app that allows you to mass text everybody. So if it's kind of like being on a chat group, but you do it individually to each person that you have a phone number, and you direct it from the computer, so you don't have to be battling the small screen space on your phone. You could just get on your computer, log into the Hustle, and text message them directly through that app. So I spend a lot of time on that, and I love that because it does get the word out really well.
Do members respond?
Yes, and that's how we get the word out in terms of the updates. We have a resource page on our homepage, and we direct them to that. Any other questions, then we also communicate with them through that. And if they call us, they can't contact us directly, but we see that we missed the call. What we do is we take that cue and we call them directly through our cell phone number.
Thanks, Jorge. I see Carlos has his hand up too. You're on mute, Carlos. You're all on. There you go. But we can't hear you. So can you speak up a little bit? Still on mute. I've unmuted you. Maybe your sound is off? Oh, I heard something. Keep talking.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, the host kept muting me, unmuting me. I don't know what happened, but okay. So I was going to say that the community labor coalition that we have with through Healthy LA is also right now. LA City Council is discussing further tenant protections and community protection items, and included in those are some Healthy LA coalition requests, such as the rehiring of staff that is laid off, that's particular to labor. So the owners and companies don't take advantage of that and fire long-term workers and bring in new workers with less seniority at lower pay, which is one of the risks when you have massive layoffs, right? And also, as the brother said, making sure that there is enough paid time off, sick leave for folks to be able to draw from if there are emergencies. So those things that that will provide a safety net to the community, and of course, anything that has to do with rent forgiveness will go a long way, because then for those that are employed or partially employed, they'll be able to save that money and not have it go to the rent, and save it for basic necessities and things that are important to keep to keep yourself healthy and stable. And so part of the additional efforts is to tie whatever mortgage forgiveness that will most assuredly come by with rental forgiveness. So those two need to go hand in hand, and discussions are going on right now at City Hall to debate and push for those. So we strongly encourage folks, if they are in the city of LA or any local jurisdiction, to push for those policy changes and in this time of crisis.
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's great. Do we have anybody else that I might have missed? I'm sorry if I did.
I think we need to move on to the next panel. We're getting to 1 p.m. and Veronica is going to be moderating that panel. Thanks so much, Jorge.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. It's Veronica Wilson. Thanks again for joining us. I'm going to introduce the next panel. I hope you all can hear me. Great. And we have a wonderful list of speakers who are waving at me. I'm just going to list their names. So we have Tia Kuntz, Kent Wong, LaTanya Skiffer. We have Chase Golding and Rachel Brunk. And I don't think I've missed anybody. So hopefully we've got all those individuals on the line. They're from wonderful institutions. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. They each have about 5 minutes to present so that we can have some question and answer time. And I believe Jorge is going to continue to help bring up slides, and Vivian's going to continue to help co-moderate. Any questions so far? Can everyone hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
And may I just intervene for a moment? One of our speakers, LaTanya Skiffer, is having trouble getting in. So I'm going to disappear for a moment and try to help her get in. In the meantime, I'm going to also put up the slides so you can introduce everybody.
Fantastic. And again, this is the Labor and Social Justice Education panel. I believe we might, Tanya, I'm moderating. Tia Kuntz looks like she's first up. You want to start us out, Tia Kuntz?
Fun, more than anything. I don't have slides for you guys, so I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about who I am, about the institutions, plural, that I represent, and about what I think the role of labor education is right now. And hopefully I'll tee up some of my co-panelists to be able to pick up where I've left off. So, hi everyone, the turnout is amazing. I'm so excited to see all of your faces, including students of mine, former students of mine, an amazing panel of my colleagues and coworkers, and including my boss. So my name is Tia Kuntz, and I have the great privilege of being involved in labor studies at 2 different institutions, and have been involved at 3, all 3 of them here in LA. So in LA, we're lucky enough that we have labor studies in the community college level, at the UC level, and at the CSU level. So when we talk about the role of labor education, one of the essential roles, in my opinion, is that it brings the power and resources of publicly funded, taxpayer-funded universities and colleges to bear on solving problems for working people. And at Dominguez Hills, I have the privilege of serving as the labor studies coordinator. So my job is to advise students who are interested in labor studies, advise students who have decided to major or major in labor studies, help to create a curriculum that satisfies the needs of labor studies students in 2020, where we are today. We've recently made our very first full-time tenure track hire who starts this fall and is actually on this call, although not on this panel. So his name is Steve McFarland. So when he gets to town, everybody, he's moving from Florida, everybody be really nice to him and reach out to Steve. I think that the role of labor studies in this time, and at all times, but at this time it's pronounced, is to make sure that faculty and students understand, support, and cultivate the rights and protections of workers, and particularly low-wage and marginalized workers. And right here in Los Angeles, we have more low-wage workers than any other city in the country. We have more immigrant workers than any other city in the country. We have more workers in key sectors where wage theft, which is anytime your paycheck reflects less than what you are entitled to. So the heavy hitters are not getting paid minimum wage, working through overtime, or working overtime without getting paid overtime, working through your meal and rest breaks, having managers or bosses steal tips, and then not having workers or employers pay workers' compensation so that when you get hurt, you're on the hook for that injury. Here in Los Angeles, our wage theft rate is higher than anywhere else in the country. So that's a bunch of bad stuff, but it's also a bunch of good stuff. Here in Los Angeles, we have bucked the national trend. Our union density rate has actually increased steadily since the 90s. And I think that's because here in LA, we've doubled down on making sure that our organizing includes immigrants, includes workers of color, and includes women. So we've also bucked the national trend on having strikes and direct actions for workers here in LA. And I like to think that that has something to do with the fact that we have a robust labor studies community here in LA. So a lot of students who graduate out of our programs go on to be organizers. I have organizers who are former students at UTLA, at USSW, at different worker centers throughout the city, which is another role that labor studies plays, right? So it increases everybody's literacy around worker rights and protections. It promotes organizing and teaches people how to organize, and I'd love to answer questions about how to do that. It also conducts research, and I'm sure Kent will talk a lot more about this, as UCLA is sort of the preeminent research institution in Southern California, particularly when it comes to labor studies right now. And like I said, I think the role really is to make sure that we're harnessing the public purse, right? We're taxpayers, and taxpayer dollars shouldn't go towards making sure that, you know, the daughters and sons of our moguls out of Silicon Valley get a good education. They should go towards solving problems for working people and making sure that we're educating the kids of working people and working people themselves. I'm very proud to turn it off to the next speaker on this panel, and I can't wait to have this conversation and answer your questions. And Kelly gave me a high five. Thank you, Kelly.
And appropriately, our next speaker is Tia's boss, Kent Wong, in at least one of the institutions where she works. So Kent, from the UCLA Labor Center, please tell us what you have been working on and how you are approaching the social justice education in labor today.
Great. Well, thank you, Veronica. It's always great to have included both two of my colleagues and friends, Tia and Veronica, who also work with me at the UCLA Labor Center. Building off a lot of the things that Tia raised, I think that for those of us in the greater Los Angeles area, we are quite fortunate to be part of such a dynamic labor movement. And over the last several years, Los Angeles really has emerged as a focal point for the new American labor movement. There's more organizing campaigns that are taking place right here in Los Angeles than virtually anywhere else in the country. This is the center for the immigrant workers movement, and the dynamism and power and courage of the immigrant workforce has shown time and again in some of the most successful organizing initiatives. Los Angeles is the home for the largest worker center movement here in the country, and there are more worker centers, many of them grounded in immigrant communities, that have fought against wage theft and fought for immigrant rights and fought for empowerment of workers in low-wage industries and in immigrant communities. So for all those reasons, our collective labor centers and labor studies programs between UCLA, Cal State Dominguez Hills, the Dolores Huerta Labor Institute at the LA Community College District, and the Labor Center at LA Trade Tech College, we all share a common mission and a common goal to use the resources within higher education to serve working people and to advance the interests of working class communities. And that's what public higher education is all about. I mean, these are taxpayer funded institutions that were designed to serve the public and to embrace a research and education and public service mission that will support working class communities. And so the Labor Center does a lot of great research, and Tia has done extraordinary research on issues involving wage theft and has been really critical in helping to advance the fight for an increase in the minimum wage. And the $15 minimum wage victory that we won here in Los Angeles would not have occurred without a dynamic coalition between unions and worker centers and community-based organizations that fought to raise the floor and to provide better wages and better working conditions for the millions and millions of low-wage workers right here in Los Angeles. The UCLA Labor Center conducted pioneer research on the Black unemployment crisis, and we helped to launch the very first Black worker center in the country that is now a model for other Black worker centers in other cities. And so that's been a very exciting development. The UCLA Labor Center has conducted research on the immigrant youth movement, and we've put out the first 3 books in the country written by and about undocumented immigrant youth. Through that, we've launched our Dream Resource Center, which has, for the last 10 years, sponsored the first national fellowship program to place undocumented immigrant youth in social justice organizations throughout the country. And so this summer, we're celebrating the 10th year of Dream Summer. We've raised over $5 million, and we have placed over 700 undocumented immigrant youth in social justice organizations. Many of them have gone on to find careers in labor unions and social justice organizations directly because of the experience that they received in the Dream Summer program. And we also, as the other labor centers do, we have an active and vibrant teaching program. This year, for the very first time, UCLA has now a labor studies major. This is the first time within UCLA. It's also the first time within the University of California. And it's no accident that it happened right here in Los Angeles, given the strength of the LA labor movement. Just to wrap up, this is a critical time for unions and workers. We are entering what I anticipate will be the depression of our generation. And workers are suffering as a consequence, massive layoffs in the hotel industry, in the transportation industry, in the janitorial industry, in the entertainment industry. Many of the mainstays of the LA economy are suffering as a consequence of the COVID-19 crisis. And it is precisely in the midst of this crisis that we see that the things that labor unions have been fighting for decades are just and are righteous, and things such as raising the minimum wage and demanding health care for all, that when millions don't have health care, all of us suffer. To demand paid sick days, things that are taken for granted in most industrialized nations around the world, it is a luxury in this country to have paid sick days, and workers have to choose between going to work sick or risk losing their jobs and losing pay. So these are critical issues that I think that we need to be fighting for in the coming period. And I do think that the role of labor centers and labor studies programs to recruit and train the next generation of labor leaders and labor activists to conduct cutting-edge research that serves policy change to advance working class communities, and to ensure that the public university, the public college system serves the vast majority of people in this society, which are workers. And so with that, I'll turn it on to our next speaker, and I welcome the opportunity to have a conversation with you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kent. Yeah, I see applause in the background there. And I think there is a lot of agreement with respect to the disparities laid bare in this brutal pandemic. So, but I want to hand it over to, I think LaTanya Skiffer is next on our list. Is she on?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. LaTanya, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Okay, great. My name is LaTanya Skiffer, and I am a professor of criminology in the sociology department at Cal State Dominguez Hills, and I'm also co-president of the California Faculty Association Dominguez Hills chapter, and I'm glad to be on this meeting call. I couldn't join by Zoom, so I'm actually on the phone, so hopefully I can manage all of these little devices I have. I only just logged on, but I did hear some of what the earlier panelists were saying, and I definitely agree. So the California Faculty Association is, I believe we are either the first or the second largest faculty association union in the nation. And we have really worked diligently to strengthen our membership over the last several years, including ensuring that our part-time faculty are full members of our union, because 60% of the faculty who teach in the CSU system are actually adjunct or contingent faculty employees rather than tenure or tenure line faculty. We recognized long ago that we were not really doing justice to our system and serving our students well when we had this divide between full-time faculty versus part-time faculty, and that many of our concerns were actually the same. So piggybacking on what some of the other panelists mentioned, we now have it so that our part-time faculty have full health care benefits, which is vital in this time of COVID-19. We have ensured that we are strengthening our membership numbers and fighting to maintain jobs. I'm not sure if you guys have heard on the news as of late, but many institutions are taking this as an opportunity to double down on their attacks against faculty. And so we already have several universities talking about job losses, even though this problem has only been on the radar for a couple of months. We also know that the CSU system has been known to squirrel away and hide billions of dollars, particularly parking fees that we have been fortunate enough to get fact-finding and find that they have a lot of resources. Adding to the resources, we all recently received the information from the federal government under the CARES Act that the CSU system is, or higher education is going to be getting about $2 billion, and the CSU system is looking to get about over $500 million of those dollars. And those can be used, half of those funds are required to be used to help students recover from COVID-19. On our campus, we have yet to hear anything from our leadership about these funds, which is quite troubling because you would think it's a nice bright light to share with people so that people can relax a little bit and know that there are going to be some resources coming. So we're spending most of our time organizing around how we can help administration make the right decisions when it comes to supporting our students. We also recognize that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted communities of color, particularly African American and also Latino communities. And because of that, it is vital that the CSU really use those funds in short order and immediately, because our students are disproportionately from those communities and will be facing great challenges as we continue to go through this disease as it ravages our country. We have a wonderful student organization called the Students for Quality Education, SQE, and SQE is currently actively conducting a survey of our students to determine what their needs are. What we know now is that students lack access to hardware as well as software when it comes to being put in this online environment. And our institutions have been very slow to get them those resources. They have finally started rolling out laptops for our students, but I received an email from a student the other day that said that they were told that they would receive a hotspot in August. And we have still the spring semester to complete. So we're really working diligently with our students and our faculty to ensure that they do not end up harmed at the end of this virus more than they have to be harmed, and that we're doing everything that we can to be compassionate and considerate, recognizing that they are facing huge challenges out there with this disease. The last thing that I will say is that we are unsure about how we're going to experience fall semester. Some of the campuses in our 23 campus system have started to think about it, but most aren't being very transparent. Some are actually giving students the impression that we will be back face to face in the fall, which the public health experts have not agreed with. They have been pretty adamant that this will be continuing social distancing into the fall semester. So we will be actively working with administration to ensure that the right messages get sent to our students so that they don't make early decisions to return to campuses just to be sent home again. Our students cannot definitely afford that. We're very excited that we now have this opportunity, despite these challenges, to organize around labor, because as you guys know, it's more important than ever that we have unions out there to protect workers and workers' rights. Much of what has happened to protect workers today in every entity that I'm aware of has been a product of organized labor or employees demanding action rather than management agreeing to do what was right in the first place. So I look forward to our conversation, and thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, LaTanya. It's so important to keep all of that in mind and understand that students and workers having protection from infection is number one. Rushing back into spaces and knowing now that we aren't prepared for disaster is not what we want. We want preparedness and support, and finding out where allocated resources are going is another concern that you bring up so importantly. Do we have a student from the Students for Quality Education on the line, Vivian?
LaTanya was speaking for Griselda, who is working as a grocery clerk up in the Watsonville area, and her hours were extended and she couldn't make it today.
Okay.
Yes, she's one of our many students out there who have had to assume additional responsibilities financially for their families who have experienced job loss. And she shared with me those concerns that I raised about having access to hardware and software. Most of our students were sent home without those resources, and the university wasn't necessarily prepared to deal with them. SQE also has prepared a list of demands for the Chancellor's office that will be presented. I think it's already been sent to the Board of Trustees, and they will be analyzing their survey results in short order, and by next week they should be public to see how the students are experiencing this. I think most of us on this call recognize, though, that it's not going to be positive in most cases, because we recognize that the digital divide is still in effect. in our nation and globally. And for some reason, our institutions of higher education just kind of forgot about that and was like, okay, everybody go jump online. You got everything you need. Many of our students are at home in families where multiple people are in school, and they may have one device that they share amongst multiple family members. They may even have some individuals who are searching for employment online. So it really is vital that we assist students in that way. And we also anticipate a lot of comments from our students regarding food insecurity, because we were dealing with that prior to this pandemic, and we know that it's likely to have exacerbated or become more pronounced during the pandemic. Most of our, I don't know about your campuses, but I know at Dominguez Hills, as a union, we're now talking about mutual aid programs for students as well as our faculty, because many of our part-time faculty, because of the low pay that we have provided to them as part-time faculty members, some have lost employment in their family. So now they may have a spouse who is unemployed, and now they are reliant upon their income solely. So we're looking to organize around all of those issues, and Griselda would love to be here, but she's on the front lines right now. And unfortunately, she probably does not have the protection that she needs, nor the job security that she needs, and the institutions have those resources now or can get them in short order, but have yet to really discuss how they are going to be distributed amongst our students.
Thank you, LaTanya, that helps. And we do want to see the list of demands, and hopefully those are circulating, and we can mobilize in solidarity for that. Next up is Chase Golding, an organizing director from AFT 1521. Chase, are you still on the line?
Yeah, thank you, Veronica.
Fantastic.
Hi, everybody. Wonderful event so far, Vivian. Thank you so much for inviting me. 3 tough acts to follow: Kent Wong, Tia Kuntz, and Dr. Skiffer there. So first off, I'm going to take half my time and speak representing LACCD's 5,000 faculty across 9 campuses who are members of the Faculty Guild. And then the other 2.5 minutes, I'll turn things over to 2 of our student organizing interns, Kelly Figueroa and Leo Gonzalez, to talk about some of the work they're doing to build power with students. So again, thank you for having me. This is a great event so far. So my background is not in labor education. I've been a union organizer since about 2007. Intimately involved with some of the campaigns you heard about today. I was the first lead organizer on Fight for 15 in LA. Tremendous support from research organizations that really helped that campaign be so successful. And so I'm so happy at this time to be organizing in the education world, because I really think that the most exciting things that are happening in the labor movement right now, nationally and in California, are happening among education unions. So, specifically in partnering with community and our students and their families to build power to win for things that affect all Angelenos, not just the issues in our contract. So you look at UTLA, you look at CTU, and so our organization represents, again, 5,000 faculty, full-time and part-time, at the 9 community colleges in LA. And we are working to replicate that model of bargaining for the common good. So I'll just talk about that for a second, if that's a new concept for folks. So I think I'd like to talk about what partnership means, something we all think about a lot in organizations, and transformational versus transactional. So many times when labor and community partner together, all of us have so much to do and so little resources that we end up getting forced into this box of like, okay, we'll buy a table at your event and you turn your people out to our rally and boom, boom, we'll call it a day. And some people call that sort of a transactional partnership. But many unions are now going deeper and forming transformational partnerships. I think that means 2 things. Number 1, it means really sharing common ground around core beliefs. And number 2, not just holding those beliefs but acting on them and sacrificing for them, even sacrificing sometimes the direct financial self-interest of our members for a greater economic and social justice good. So what does that look like in LACCD right now? We have 230,000 students in the Los Angeles Community College District. The LA Times has reported before that about 20% of our students are homeless. The variances in our student population as compared to other higher ed systems include age, immigration status. We serve, I would say that every place that power and oppression shows up in LA has an intersection with the community college system. And so, if I stop my video for a second, you'll see our logo here, faculty, community, students. And so the history of our organization has been one, like many unions, where we're sort of very closed off, where we fight for our own stuff and call it a day. And so we are finding it ever more important to partner in real ways with students and community to sacrifice, and because in a resource scarce environment where we're all sort of fighting for the same pot of money, as many of you know well from your activism or your jobs, it can be difficult to put our own financial self-interest aside. So for example, and not fight for scraps, but to unite and fight power together for common interest. So for example, you'll hear from Kelly and Leo about the work they're doing to support student workers and actually basic student needs. That money comes from the same pot of money that we're actively bargaining for in the form of wages, benefits, and class size. So we had work to do to have political conversations among our members and help them understand the importance of putting our political capital into fights that release those funds for other purposes than our own contract fight. So it's a long haul. We got a few years before, I hope that the next time that we bargain in 3 years, we're sort of maybe where UTLA was 3 years ago. That would be wonderful. And so, I'll just turn things over to Kelly and Leo. By the way, congratulations to each of them because they're currently receiving acceptance letters from UC Berkeley and UC Davis and all kinds of schools that seem to be their next phase in life. So Kelly and Leo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on this panel and just, hear you guys, advocating for us students. So my name is Kelly Figueroa, and I'm a student at East Los Angeles College. My major is political science. So I am the president of a club on campus. It's called ESPA, but it stands for ELAC Students for Political Awareness and Advocacy. So in our club, what we focus on is to bring students to a space where they can talk about issues that are going on campus. And we try to just sit there and strategize as to how can we best address these issues, provide solutions. But at the beginning, the problem that we were running into is that, we couldn't effectively organize or find solutions. We were just, finding random ways to fix these issues. So luckily, our advisor for the club, who is also I think the political director for the I'm so sorry, permítame, for the political AFT union. She's the political director of AFT union, and her name is Dr. Natalina Montero. And so she introduced an internship to us through AFT, and basically this internship serves to teach students about labor and labor organizing and mobilizing. And so it's been amazing because in this program, we've learned to go from small initiatives to bigger ones. So for example, one of our first initiatives was to actually just provide water filtration systems on campus because students were spending like $8 a week on water bottles, right? So we pushed for it. We made sure to talk to the right people. And when that didn't work, we petitioned. We got over 1,500 signatures from students, and we made it happen. So those water filtration stations got approved. In addition, we also got an amazing opportunity on behalf of the program to be trained to be student or to be surveyors, actually able we're able to play in collecting data for the Dolores Huerta Institute and for the UCLA Labor Center. So it's really amazing. Also, this semester we worked on a different initiative, and it was basically to make sure that student workers receive pay until the end of the semester. And so my peer is going to elaborate more on that, my friend Leo. But I just want to mention that, you know, students, but working as students, like alongside the union, has developed into a strong and unique partnership to better our schools and better our communities. Now, with this being said, I'll pass it over to Leo.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, so much for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for letting me be here today. It's really an honor and a privilege. My name is Leonardo Gonzalez. I'm an ELAC student activist, and I had the opportunity to work alongside the AFT Union as a partner in advocating for students across our college district. Working alongside AFT has really allowed me to gain meaningful experience in the development of organizing, and has also actually allowed me to create impactful student-led initiatives that have impacted students all across our district. Like Kelly mentioned, student workers across our district were worrisome of the lack of communication being delivered in regards to their jobs and pay. As many of you guys might possibly know, our district actually went on a 2-week lecture leave. And students were not required to go to class. Lectures were put on hold temporarily as the college transitioned to put the material online. And during that period, student workers actually let go for 2 weeks. And they were actually paid for those 2 weeks, but we were not communicating in regards to actually working once we were back online. And we were a little bit worried about how we're going to pay our bills, if we're going to have our jobs after this transition. So Kelly and I took it upon ourselves, as both student workers at our college, to actually collect data from students all across our district to kind of figure out, what do you do? What kind of positions do you hold at your college? And if you're a student worker, how would the lack of pay and not having a job during this pandemic and during the semester really affect not only yourself, but your entire household? And we chose household because although many of our students live with their families, there are some students that do live with, other students at the same college. So the whole household will be affected because income is important to pay rent for a house that maybe perhaps many students share. So with coordination with AFT, from what we learned through our internship this semester, me and Kelly used all of our education, actually made it into a reality for students across our district. We were able to survey over 200 students from all our colleges, all across our district, and actually with coordination with the AFT Union, we were able to actually sit down one-on-one with the president of the Board of Trustees, as well as the chancellor of the entire district and fellow other members from the board. And through this initiative, we were actually able to get a guarantee directly from our district chancellor, ensuring that student workers were going to be paid for the entire semester. So we succeeded in our overall short-term goal. But throughout this month, we have seen that the district actually knocked down a budget proposal to provide $1.7 million for our college to help students with financial relief and also to student food insecurities. And overall, since we succeeded in our short-term goal, we did not lose sight of our overall goal in ensuring that students are advocated for and represented. And the AFT Union has organized and advocated for not only their own members, but also for our communities that are facing underrepresentation. And they have done so again and again. And we are so thankful for our union and also for the unions across California and Los Angeles that have not backed down from the fight. Thank you.
And I'm sure the locals are so grateful. Yeah, big applause for all the energy that you, Leo, and Kelly bring to the movement. You are the future of the movement, and we really appreciate the details of what you're organizing around. It's just beyond me that there's a lack of access on campus to potable water where you could just go to a drinking fountain and fill your water bottle. So I appreciate all your effort and enthusiasm, and thank you very much for sharing and taking that time today. We have one more speaker on our list, Rachel Brunke. Thank you for correcting that. From the Port of Los Angeles High School, and I am a fan. I have seen at actions students come out standing up for workers and standing up for environmental justice, standing up for just transition. So please tell us more about your work, Rachel.
Super cool. Thank you, Veronica. And I don't know if I kept trying to run around the house, find the quietest place in my home, and the best connectivity. And just a little disclaimer, I really, really wanted to go out into my backyard. I bought my place about 9 years ago, and I call it Harbor Farms, and I grow food here. And that's, just trying to walk the talk, and kind of my whole message today is about just transition, and how this crisis right now is just throwing this golden opportunity. And Veronica, I was going to give a shout out to you because you're on our brochure. The Labor Center for Sustainability is on our brochure. So we've been talking about you all for years. Someone said earlier, and probably a lot of us, I don't necessarily speak for my school. Very definitely. We're not union. By the way, it's a charter. I'm just going to say that right now. We're not union, so I have less protection, but at the same time, I've tried to just really push the envelope. I want to say thank you so much to Vivian, and to tell everybody to go on YouTube maybe and check out something called the Cold War Truth Commission. Vivian was a wonderful panelist and participant and gave expert testimony on what the Cold War did to American society, did to American labor. And I think that's relevant right now, because what we need to do is be thinking big, be thinking outside the box. What is the new economy going to look like? What does work even mean? And what is it for? And so the Cold War just, for 100 years has crushed kind of a lot of dreams, and forget the American dream, but human dreams of peace and survival. So, and cooperation. That was apparently an evil thing, to be cooperating internationally or even cooperating in our neighborhoods. And so today, when we're looking at this kind of desperate need for a new way of thinking, I'll tell you something. I'm not saying this to people who don't also think this way probably, but it's kind of scary. You're thinking, wow, how are we ever going to create a new way of thinking? And to me, I see this COVID and the homestays and the chaos that's happening. I don't know, usually I don't look at local news. I can't stand it, but everyone's talking about real things. Everyone, the most plastic, superficial people that you can see on television year after year, their hearts are going out to people. They're talking about things, and it kind of reminds me of 9/11. It feels like a slow motion 9/11. People are really, really just extending their solidarity, and I think that's so important. So again, I don't speak for Pla, but I think one of the early speakers, I forget her name, I think Cristal, I came in right when she was sharing. She was talking about what is essential, and that a lot of workers were walking off the jobs. They weren't going to be building, luxury resorts and building golf courses, and none of that matters right now. And it's so heartening to see that it takes like a flash and people get real. One of my sayings I like to say is, survival will trump lies. And I think we can see that immediately. So it's very, it's good to think of. So for me, the question, that we're talking about right now is, what is essential work? And so therefore myself as an educator, I'm a high school teacher, what am I supposed to be preparing these kids for? I've always been like an out of the box kind of liver and teacher, certainly. So I want y'all to know, speaking of, I love your UCLA teachers talking about using tax dollars to teach social justice. Just FYI, it's happened at the high school level too. I have to make my day matter, and your tax dollars matter, and all of our tax dollars matter. So I definitely go into classroom every day and just kind of, blow minds. And one of the things we talk about a lot is powering down. I teach a class called Environmental Resource Engineering that I designed from my master's degree. Ooh, I see someone out there, Chase. From my master's degree in Environmental Resource Engineering from Humboldt State. And, we're seeing it all around right now. I live in San Pedro. I live at the port, and you can look out on the water right now, you guys. There's a dozen cruise ships sitting on the water. They have nowhere to go. There's a dozen oil tankers sitting right off our coast. They can't unload their oil because no one wants it anymore. We're not using it. It's pretty, I know, it's just amazing. So, without any thoughtlessness about workers, because a lot of my students, their families work in the refineries, their families work in the oil industry, or even in, what I consider, also very polluting is just basically the port. It's just international shopping. And so many of I don't mean to be heretical, but I'm just speaking, what I see is, so many times when people in my area, ILWU, they want to grow and grow and grow. And I just think, that's not sustainable. So for me, all workers matter, and that's what I teach, but not necessarily, like, all workers are essential, all people, but not necessarily all work. And so I think we're seeing that it's this transition. So we talk a lot about just transition in my class. And I want to say one thing very important before I kind of put on my teaching hat. So this is without a teaching hat on, is on Friday, we're going to be doing an action at the port here, a car caravan for peace against the potential invasion of Venezuela. Right now, 2 weeks ago, Trump sent down thousands of soldiers and sailors, troops, aircraft carriers, battleships, and we're poised to invade. It's the largest mobilization in the area since the invasion of Panama. And so I think international worker solidarity is very, very important. And we're talking about workers, not wars. And just I think it's a real opportunity to shift from all types of violence into peace-making economies. So one other thing, I ran for state assembly a few years ago, and my #1 platform was land reform. And I get that from my background in Latin America and Latin America solidarity, Reforma Agraria. So all of the speakers talking about rent stabilization and, basically huelga, no rents, no mortgages, just stop it. And so many countries have done that. And again, I go back to, we're not allowed to even dream that that's possible for us. And so a couple of things also.
Rachel, it's wonderful to hear all of the things. You have about 15 minutes left, and hopefully you'll be able to work some of that into the Q&A. I see a lot on the chat, so yes.
Can I close up with 1 minute? Thank you. Yep. 30 seconds? Okay. And so for me, all having access to land, I've had a lot of experience in Cuba, and in 1960, they basically said, wherever you live, there you own it. And so I really believe that a transition will happen. It's not so much what I earn as what I owe. And when we have true security of housing, then people are going to become much more resource efficient, and they're going to start growing their own food. They're going to need less of kind of the traditional economy. And so it's not why I need money. It's not how much money I have, but why I need that money also. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. And yes, if we had more time, it would be great to learn more. And I hope we do have a chance to do that. I've been seeing many comments, resources flowing through the chat. So thank you for sharing those with us. I did see a question from Emma about connectivity in rural areas. Emma, do you want to ask a question to the panel? And then we're taking Stack as well.
Yeah, sorry. The sun came out. It was snowing earlier. I'm talking to you from Nova Scotia. I used to live in San Pedro. Connecting to this.
Random.
I was just thinking, I still find things that have port gunk on them. So here in Canada, one of the big issues that's been facing the students, university level and lower level, has been that and I don't know if anyone in this group will even know the answer, is that the bandwidth is really low and access to decent internet is really hard in rural areas. So education has been, aside from all the other chaos and money and how our lives have been changed, but students can't even get onto whatever platforms their local districts are using. And I just wondered if anyone knew if that had been an issue in rural California, or I've been hearing those issues facing teachers stateside, because here that's probably been one of the number one sort of very basic issues, other than not having money and time.
Actually, this is Latanya Skiffer. I would like to answer part of that question, which is even in our urban areas, we're experiencing the same issue. Our internet providers had a very spotty approach to providing services for communities anyway, and this pandemic has pretty much highlighted that. I saw a report also that LAUSD is having a serious problem with attendance because of this very issue. They had no hardware, first of all, for their students, but even once they did that, accessing their systems has become a challenge for students. So there's going to be a lot of talk about how we will have to address this for students moving forward, as well as the gaps that this virus has left in the learning circles that our students belong to. So we hear you, definitely, and it's not a matter of capability, it's a matter of will, political will, for us to address this problem.
That's definitely part of the issue here, and in Nova Scotia, it's particularly one of the groups that's particularly impacting is rural Black communities. Nova Scotia is a really large percentage of rural Black communities, and the other communities that are not being really badly impacted are Indigenous communities. So already populations that are severely underserved, and so thank you so much. I hadn't realized that there were urban issues on the same level.
Yeah, thank you. And this is why we try to bring ourselves together to find out what we are seeing and how we can join forces. Vivian gave me a little heads up. Denise Robb is on the phone. Are you on the line? From Pierce College. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your social justice teaching? What's happening in your world?
Well, it's part of my class. In fact, I also, in the fall, we have the Dolores Huerta Institute. We do a mock union organization. We divide the class into business and labor, and it's really an eye-opening experience. But at Pierce, I was going to mention that at the Senate yesterday, 2 days ago, they talked about the fact that we may be experiencing a lot of cuts. We were talking about cuts anyway, but now they had a number of proposals up from the Budget Committee. Nothing's finalized, but it ranges from, of course, the salary freezes. They're talking about salary freezes to up to 15% cut in all programs across the board in our budget altogether. I hope that's not going to happen. It was encouraging to hear you talk about the fact that there is some money available, because they told us that because we've spent so much money on COVID, we're actually we've used our savings are basically gone. We're struggling with the same thing that all of you talked about. I had a number of students who didn't even have a computer they're trying to take the class on their phone, and it's really pretty much impossible to write an essay on your phone. Even the quizzes, we have a platform on Canvas called UJA, and I just found out UJA only works with Google Chrome on a computer. And we've been encouraged to do all of our lectures and all of our video quizzes and things like that using UJA because it has a 90% accuracy in captioning. And we have about 1,000 students who are deaf. So captioning is, I know we're supposed to do it, but it's even more essential when you actually have students that are relying on it. So, so we're dealing with all kinds of issues. I just gave a lecture to my students on the difference between students that have resources and students that don't. Some of our students are at home with their parents, and they have great computers and great internet. And I have a student with 6 children. They're all in 2 rooms. They're not at school, and he's the only person making a living. So he has to go out risking his life to work. And then he has to come home and try to study and take 5 classes with 6 children, basically, and homeschool them with his wife. So we have a lot of issues that we're struggling with, and we're doing the best we can. We got computers out to most of them, so that's something.
We appreciate that, Denise. This is something that I think many of us want to understand, and I see students coming to class with just a phone, reading the lecture notes, reading lecture, and still keeping up with all of the requirements. And I just don't know how that is working out now. That it is nearly impossible, as you just told us, for many people who are juggling so much.
And one of the things I'm doing, and a lot of us have been told to do and decided to do, is we're going to make it much easier. If you get your assignment in 3 weeks late, we don't mark you down, as long as you are trying. And that's what I told them. As long as you're trying, you'll be fine. Because you have to think about the students who are at the lower end of the economic scale first, because the rest of them will be fine, but you have to think about the students that are really struggling. And so we're just going to make it as easy as possible for them. And we offer a lot of counseling and support. We have counseling, and we spend a lot of sessions where the students come online and we just talk about, I ask, are you eating? Do you have food? Do you need help? Because we have resources at the LA Community College District to help them. So we're doing social work, and probably more social work than teaching.
And I would just chime in. Hi, Denise.
Hi.
I would chime in on the LACCD perspective. So, 2 things that come up for me. So one thing to know is that I think it's called AJCCC. It's our accreditation organization, has just said that faculty can do correspondence education because so many students don't have internet access, which is, at this point really only used for to educate incarcerated people. And, before COVID, we had, I think it was 14%, maybe 18% of our classes were online. So in about 2 weeks, faculty transitioned 8,000 sections to online. And so we haven't sort of rung the bell as a union and publicized the great work that our members have done to do that. But I would like, I think if we do this right, then that is a lot of capital that will help faculty and students for years to come sort of make sure that politicians and everybody remembers the great work that they've done and help, put that capital into movements for justice.
Thank you, Chase. And I'm seeing some really great comments and suggestions in the chat. I think it is a great opportunity, Tia Kuntz mentions, of coming together and mobilizing, shaping the demands together with students about, to tell universities and institutions what they need to do to support staff and students and lecturers, full and part-time and so on. I'm wondering if there's anybody on the phone who wants to just voice a question, raise a hand by saying that they would like to ask or make a comment, given that we are talking about how we all access these things and we don't have everybody accessing potentially the chat. Anybody on the phone?
In the interim, I'm going to just say really quickly that some of the unsung people who've put this together were Miguel Gutierrez, Taylor Hosea, Cristal de la Torre, Cindy Garcia, Shannen Maas, and of course all the speakers and the hosts, even the moderators like Veronica, who jumped in at my pleading and is doing such a great job. So I think the technology is not transparent in terms of what goes into something like this, or even the organizing. And it was wonderful to have the students brainstorming and planning and trying to make this happen. And I want to thank Chase too for inviting his students that he works with. They were a great addition, and there were a lot of frustrations about getting on, and I'm still getting some people registering even now. We have another panel coming up that's going to be on incarceration and detention and ICE and criminal justice or injustice around many of the communities we were discussing. Thanks, Denise, also for jumping in and sharing those important, ideas and the situations you're facing. Thanks again.
We only have a couple minutes left before the next panel. I'm trying to see if there are any other hands raising, if there's anyone on the line on the phone or who hasn't had a chance. Just go ahead and jump in. And I'll pause for a second or interrupt me as I move on to closing. So we really appreciate all of our speakers. And as Vivian mentioned, there is one more panel. It's Justice for Incarcerated and Detained. Please stay on if you can and welcome them as they join us. And hopefully, there is a way to save the chat. So if there's something in the chats that you saw that you want to keep going, and the three that's like, it looks like an ellipses on the right. If you are on a computer, you can save those, go back to them, or cut and paste. And if you're on the phone, email us or contact one of the persons who invited you to the to the event and let them know that you're interested in getting the resources that were mentioned. There are many things that we've been circulating that are very helpful to support students, to support workers, to support faculty, and we want to be able to share those out. So with no other last minute not hearing anything, Vivian, you want to move on to the next segment?
Yes, and Andi Pla will be moderating that session. Andi, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
All right,
Andi,
take it away.
Labor Studies at Dominguez Hills.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, as Tia said, I'm an alum. My name is Andi. I'm an alum from the Labor Studies and IDS program at Dominguez Hills. Highly suggest it. It's still my favorite place in the world. And now I am finishing up law school in Oregon, which is all virtual, and going through that. And I'm also an active member of the National Lawyers Guild, both on my campus and on the national level. So our panel, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who already went. It's been awesome, and I'm so glad the fair was able to go on. This is really close to my heart and a really important event to me. So the last panel is going to be, we're going to talk about family preparedness and justice for incarcerated and detained. I'll introduce the speakers quickly before we move in. First, we're going to start with Lisette Rodriguez, who is an attorney with CSUDH, and we're going to talk about the work that they're doing on the ground as part of the Family Preparedness Project, and the steps that are being taken right now to protect families. And then next, we'll go to Stephanie Padilla, who is a staff attorney at the ACLU, and we'll hear about how the ACLU is basically responding to this increase in ICE activities and tactics that we're seeing right now with the influx of people being home. And then lastly, we'll go to Anices Hernandez, who is the co-director of La Defensa and a member of Justice LA, and talk about what coming out of this crisis is going to look like and what kind of policies or actions that La Defensa is pushing for and then demands. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisette, if you're ready. There we go.
I'm getting a message saying host has disabled screen sharing or share screen. I can't get
No,
that.
it should be working now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm still getting that message. I don't know why.
Okay, I'm going to look and see if we can make
Welcome to
co-host. Here it is.
Instruction.
All right, you're
well,
co-host. Go ahead and share
Okay.
your screen.
Let's see if we can do that. There he goes. All right. You see it okay?
Yes.
There it is.
And there it is. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lisette Rodriguez, and I live and work on the ancestral traditional homelands that are unceded territories of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Achaman people. I'm in Long Beach currently with my 3-year-old who's in the background serenading us. Sorry about that. And I'm a staff attorney for CSUDH Legal Services, which is a nonprofit legal services organization.
You just took it off.
And we give.
You just take it off.
Honey, hold on. We give a lot of free legal services for the following folks. We have an employment rights project clinic that is up and running. It's done virtual services for folks that have employment concerns on regard anything from the spectrum of wage theft and wages to unemployment claims, especially during this time as we're having lots of layoffs. We also have housing, a housing clinic. And if you can see up there on the site, there is a feature. It says click here for COVID-19 resources. We have lots of informational guides and materials that are exactly what it is. It's resources, either mutual aid, know your rights, information, legal information, as well as a way to get back to our organization for some support and assistance. And with the Family Preparedness Project, which started in 2017 as a response to this administration and all of their ramping up of anti-immigration policies and protocols, CSUDH found a way to answer quickly with a rapid response of family preparedness. So what I do is give education and outreach to immigrant families and communities and help them think about if there is an absence of the parents, what happens to the minor children. We have a caregiver affidavit that allows parents to designate an immediate family relative to take care of the minor children and have authorization for medical visits, dental visits, and educational matriculation. So enrollment and questions about schooling can actually get tucked under that. There are limitations, however, so it's best that the practice is first, we do it informally, and then we'll do it through guardianship in the courts if necessary. Because it's always harder to have to go back to court to ask a judge to return your children. So we work with families to help them understand their options and their rights around care, custody, and control, which is a constitutional principle with respect to parenting. I've also expanded as of late, the project because of public charge. And public charge is a grounds of inadmissibility. It is a test that looks at 7 different factors, and ICE and the USCIS immigration, they're not supposed to just take one factor, but rather look at the totality of circumstances. And during this time, we've had a lot of concerns about how families are not getting the help that they need because they are concerned about becoming a public charge under the test and then having it impede or prohibit their possibilities to adjust status. So this is an application for folks who are either going to come in on a visa, looking to be legal permanent residents, and or, you know, especially sponsored by family members. So anyone who is already a legal permanent resident, it does not apply to them. And it also does not apply to other folks that have refugee status, asylee status at the point of application. So they've already done that. TPS, temporary protected status, and DACA, because DACA is not a pathway to citizenship. So public charge does not impact them, but it might if someone who's a DACA recipient decides to get married and tries to adjust, then there is a question about how that's going to work in terms of public charge. I'm hoping to share the next screen with you, and here you go. So today I just want to briefly talk about public charge, public benefits, and the use of certain things during this pandemic. So the first question posed by a lot of folks is the following: I'm undocumented, I don't qualify for Medi-Cal, can I get emergency Medi-Cal? How is that being seen? And under the immigration laws, an emergency medical condition is considered critical and it is necessary. So now at first we had LA County policy, and now we have federal policy that has stepped up to say that anyone who needs testing or treatment for COVID-19 can do so without having to worry about it becoming a public charge factor. The second question is, can I qualify for Medi-Cal? And again, Medi-Cal is California specific. So Medicaid, federal Medicaid, and federal Medi-Cal are interchangeable towards that end. So you have legal status, but you've been in the United States for less than 5 years. So green card holders, refugees, asylees don't have to wait 5 years to get onto Medi-Cal. Especially during this time, it is really important that we have access to all healthcare that's necessary for our families, especially when we're talking about mixed status families and undocumented families. So there's also exceptions in the public charge test, which is in this last policy that took effect on February 24th. And it basically says that there's an exception carved out for children who are under 21 years of age and pregnant women during that whole term, and then 60 days after they deliver. So that will not be counted as a public charge. And then also children can qualify to get CHIP, which is also the Children's Health Insurance Program, without having any concerns. Parents who are undocumented and have U.S. citizen children do not have to worry about enrolling in programs that benefit the children. Public charge only looks at the benefits that are in the name of that individual. So a lot of exemptions and exceptions have come under public charge and this public charge test. So things like CHIP, things like school nutrition programs, and certainly we're looking at, what is the other one I'm thinking about? WIC programs, definitely WIC. So, I would encourage families that have any concerns about getting those benefits for their children not to hesitate if they qualify, they certainly can apply, receive them, and not worry about how that's going to impact public charge. Sorry. And then also, if I'm using Medi-Cal for COVID treatment, it counts against me? Again, I've already pretty much answered that in that it will not. So even includes the vaccination at the time where it may become available, it should not count. And even if it's paid for by the Medi-Cal benefits. In 4, it says, I'm undocumented. Will ICE try to arrest me if I'm hospitalized? There is a thing known as, in the policy guidelines for Department of Homeland Security, it is called sensitive locations. It's looking at different institutions and places where ICE should not necessarily go. So schools, churches, hospitals, funeral locations, and those kinds of things. Sorry, she's giving me her lamb. So with respect to that, there is no guarantee that ICE will not make arrests outside of those places. Our understanding is that ICE still continues to do their enforcement during this time, and there are no protocols in place that prevent them. So the continuation of Know Your Rights as well as a family preparedness plan is going to go a long way in terms of supporting families who may be in this situation. And in the next set of questions, could I be deported for using public benefits after I become a legal permanent resident? So it's rare to be deported under the public charge test. Before February 24th, the law of public charge test said that if you had benefits and your sponsor had benefits and that you owed the government for receiving those services and did not pay and you refused to pay, then that was definitely a grounds for inadmissibility and for deportability. Now the way it's seen is that, especially during this time, if you're using public benefits for COVID-19 as a result of having it, being tested for it, rather having it and then having to have treatment, USCIS and the Department of Homeland Security has said that they are not going to be looking at it as an absolute, but their suggestion is that the language says that the applicant should write a letter documenting what were the circumstances that had them have to access public benefits during this time. So basically you would attach a letter to your application explaining why it is that you received a certain benefit and why it was necessary. And so they're going to take that as a mitigating factor. And in 6, if I use public benefits, can I still sponsor my family members to immigrate? And the answer is yes, certainly. I think the difference is that it will possibly prove to be a little bit difficult in showing or in demonstrating that you have enough resources to provide for the family members that you want to sponsor for. And that has to be clearly shown in the affidavit of support, which has gotten lengthier and more, just really more involved in terms of the kinds of things that they're asking now. So the best bet that you can do is talk to an immigration attorney about your circumstances and have the best possible guidance on that. In 7, I'm asking, is a child care voucher considered cash assistance since a parent is getting money to pay for child care? The simple answer is no. Child care vouchers are not considered cash assistance. And so they're outside of the public charge test. And in 8, the last is, what healthcare benefits can I as a DACA recipient get? So with respect to DACA, it's a very challenging time for the millions of DACA recipients right now. The U.S. Supreme Court is scheduled to render a decision, and there wasn't one today. We're looking at now possibly Thursday. And right now, DACA recipients they're not eligible for federal Medi-Cal, and they cannot purchase private health insurance through the ACA marketplaces. But if a DACA recipient is working and the employer provides health benefits, then they certainly can take advantage of that and qualify for those enrollment benefits under their employer's insurance. And also I wanted to add that with the court case that is ongoing at the Supreme Court level, the National Immigration Law Center has filed a supplementary brief basically outlining how there are approximately recipients and how the country would be harmed by a negative decision on DACA. So the NILC was allowed to submit their brief, and hopefully the importance of the contributions that DACA recipients give to this country. And
Thank you, Lisette. The screen did not change where those questions can be found.
Oh, yes. So I will go ahead and, what happened? Share the screen. Okay, because I know that this is being recorded. The first page of the questions.
I think we're having technical.
And then I'll provide a link to it in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for your time.
So now we're going to talk to Stephanie Padilla. Are you available?
Oh, can you guys hear me? See me?
Okay,
please. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay. Hi, I'm the Bakersfield office. Oh, sorry. Was someone trying to say something? Okay. So a little background, just really quickly, about why I decided to go into near and dear to my heart. Actually, both of my grandfathers were a part of the Bracero program. And so growing up, we lived with my grandparents in farm worker housing, surrounded by peach orchards. And it was there that I farm workers and the lack of access to legal resources to help them challenge various injustices that they faced in the context of labor and employment, immigration issues, racial and identity profiling, which at the time I wasn't really able to categorize or articulate what it was called, but I knew it was wrong. And so witnessing a lot of those sort of injustices really fueled my desire to pursue a career in law. I actually started as a sister agency of the NLRB, but it focuses exclusively on the labor rights of farm workers, and it helps prosecute unfair labor practices. But I wanted to do more in terms of like the immigration context and policing work. And so when I saw this job opportunity at the ACLU, and I applied, and now I'm here, and those are the two issues that I work with. But I'm here to talk a little bit about a lawsuit that we just filed last Thursday. So last Thursday, our office, along with the UCI Immigrant Rights Clinic and the law firm Schulz & Olson, filed a lawsuit against ICE to stop ICE agents from using ruse tactics like impersonating police officers and other unlawful. The lawsuit on behalf of an individual, Osni Soto Vasquez Kid, who is actually a healthcare professional and a DACA recipient, and two organizational plaintiffs. True is that under the Fourth Amendment, generally it prohibits government officials from entering the home without a judicial warrant before conducting a home search or arrest operation. In some cases, ICE officers may have an administrative warrant issued by the agency, but these administrative warrants don't permit officers to enter the home because they haven't been reviewed by an independent. And so instead of obtaining judicial warrants, ICE officers frequently engage in these sort of deceptive tactics to gain consent to enter the home or to lure people out of their homes. And we've been seeing this practice actually increase as community organizations and as other legal service providers start to provide a lot of Know Your Rights information and campaigns to educate people about their rights, especially when interacting with ICE. Our community members have been empowered to exercise their rights and have these rights and denied ICE entry into their homes, or have exercised them in other contexts when they interact with ICE officers. And because of this this is sort of to rely on deception to trick people to, again, come out of their homes or to let them into their homes. Some of, in addition to wearing actual uniforms that say with, the like black vests that say police, they also falsely identify probation officers. Some of the three like more common scenarios that we've seen them employ is that they say that they're conducting a criminal investigation. They really criminal and really dangerous, has been using the identity of someone inside that home or is targeting people inside that home. And so can they come inside to talk to folks, to ask a few questions that will help with their investigation? Or there's an issue with the person's car and ask them to step outside so that they can help them resolve whatever the issue is. Or they identify as probation officers and say that they're looking for a particular person that's living there. The three more common scenarios that we've seen, although they employ the gamut, it runs the gamut in terms of what other sort of deceptive tactics they employ. And usually only after ICE comes in and ICE arrests them, do ICE actually identify themselves as ICE officers and not police officers. And sometimes they don't even identify in the moment after they arrest people until and identify themselves like once they've taken the person into an ICE processing facility and started like the process of detaining them. So this is very problematic. There's additional layers, and so the other like two layers, just really quickly, is that we're arguing that in addition to these deceptive tactics of impersonating police officers, ICE officers onto the curtilage, which is just a legal term for basically like the private areas that immediately surround a home, so like porches or hallways or other yards or other private areas, that by entering into these spaces, by trespassing into these spaces without permission or a judicial warrant, they're also violating the Fourth Amendment, because these private areas are also entitled to the same sort of protections against government intrusions as and then the other layer of this lawsuit is that we're arguing that the practices that ICE is using violates its own regulations. There's an ICE memo that sets forth procedures for the use of ruses by officers. It recognizes that ruses could affect the public image of the impersonated agency or raise security government agency. And so it actually requires that ICE first notify an agency or the entity it plans to impersonate and obtain permission. But ICE is not providing notice, nor is it seeking permission of these agencies that it impersonates. And so that too is so then that is also violative of their own regulations that they have. And so if these sort of practices are not troubling in and of themselves in just sort of normal times, particularly right now, it's even more troubling because, this is a time where people are, sheltering in place and want to feel safe at home. And ICE is still continuing to employ these practices and in effectuating sort of these home arrests, even during, this COVID-19 pandemic that we're all going through. And this just sort of furthers like people not feeling safe at home because they're vulnerable to these sort of unconstitutional searches and arrests by ICE. In conjunction with the lawsuit, we also are pushing a big Know Your Rights campaign to educate people about their rights if ICE were to come to the door and be subjected to sort of these home arrests. For more information, you guys can enter icenotwelcome.org. And on that website, we have access to Know Your Rights materials. We also have a small community handbook, which kind of gives folks just the basics about what the rights are and what they should do in these sorts of situations, like verifying that they're actually verifying that they're actually police officers or probation officers or whatever they're purporting to be by asking for a badge or a business card to see a warrant. They can either slip it under the door or put it up against a window so that they can see, documenting what happens and then reporting it to Rapid Response Network or other organizations, or by sharing their story with us through our website. And there's also, like stickers and yard signs and these door hangers that folks can print out and place on their door, and it has all of their rights, so that if should this happen, they have those readily accessible for them to access. And I don't know if there's still time to talk very quickly about other detention work that we do, but if not, I can just share that maybe in the comments section or at the end during Q&As.
I think we have a couple minutes, but we can also do Q&As at the end and any last calls to action if you think that's a better spot.
I can talk about it really, really quickly, and then if folks have questions during the Q&A.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So in addition to this lawsuit, other things that our office does, particularly our Bakersfield office, is there's a detention center in Bakersfield. It's called Mesa Verde, and we monitor detention conditions there. For example, like the over and underuse medication, making sure that there's adequate provision of medical care. And currently, our 3 affiliates in the state, along with other legal service providers, have filed lawsuits seeking the release of immigrant detainees at the different detention centers throughout California. For example, our Bakersfield office, along with our NorCal affiliate and LCCR and the San Francisco Public Defender's Office and Lincoln Willie, filed a mass habeas petition and a TRO, a temporary restraining order, on behalf of 12 people. 8 of those people were, 8 of the 12 were released. And the 4 that weren't released, the judge found that they didn't fall along the lines of the CDC the CDC medical vulnerabilities. And our NorCal affiliate just filed a class action seeking wider relief, and also seeking the depopulation of Mesa Verde and Yuba County Jail ICE detainees, to allow to release folks, but also to an extent where it would allow for CDC guidelines to be followed in regards to social distancing and provision of personal hygiene items, which you would think people would have access to, but they don't even have access to basic soap, and oftentimes have to buy that from the commissary. And our SoCal affiliate and other organizations in the community have also filed similar lawsuits. And that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. So lastly, we'll have Onisis Hernandez, and then we'll go to a Q&A and any calls for action that the 3 of you want to share.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me this afternoon. My name is Onisis Hernandez, she, her, hers. I'm the Executive Director of La Defensa and a member of the Justice LA Coalition. Justice LA Coalition is a coalition of organizations throughout LA County, fighting jail expansion in LA County and fighting for those dollars meant to build out, jails, to go to community-based services, and to build out, a decentralized system of care and housing that we hope that all our family members have access to. As you all know, last year we stopped LA County from building 2 new jails, a women's jail in Lancaster and a jail just for people who have mental health needs in downtown LA. We were able to successfully stop that before the COVID crisis. And we were also able to make sure that they passed a motion in creating an alternatives to incarceration department that will prevent, tons and thousands of our loved ones from being impacted by emergency rooms, jails, and even law enforcement impacts. But just to give you a little bit of a kind of context of where we were before COVID in LA County, the average daily population right before COVID was 17,000 people in our LA County jails every single day. 44% of those people, which is about over 7,000 people, were there pre-trial, meaning that they were legally innocent, but they're just there because they can't pay for their freedom. Over 7,000 people. And we know that there are currently about 3,500 people who have serious behavioral health needs, such as mental health needs or substance use needs, that have been identified that could be better served in the community. And so that's what we're working with. Before COVID, the groups of people in there is just, LA County has the largest jail system in the entire country. And right now, what we've seen after COVID is that the population is more closer to 12,000. So literally within a matter of a few weeks, the LA County jail population has dropped by nearly 5,000 people. And this is, again, when they told us that they needed to build 4,000 new jail beds. So we're in a context right now where the system is showing how arbitrary it is. We've seen that the sheriff has said, we're going to decrease bookings every day from the regular 300 a day to just 60 a day. Literally just saying that that's what they're going to do. That's the number that they decided, no context around it. But it's just kind of intense to know that they don't have to be arresting 300 people every day. And so we've also seen that the systems, different system actors have reacted differently. For example, some of the hardest to get to system actors have been the judges. And they've been some of the folks who have taken away people's freedoms and have literally sentenced people to COVID-19 in LA County. The presiding judge has made it so that, normally you would see a judge between 24 to 48 hours for your first appearance on arraignment, right? They've extended that to up to 7 days. And so we know people who, instead of waiting 48 hours to see a judge, that they're waiting up to a week to be put in front of a judge. That means that they've spent extra days in jail when they didn't need to, especially because there's been mandates to make almost all offenses zero bail, which is really incredible. And I can't tell you, we've been fighting years and over 2 years for LA County and California to take away cash bail. And we're seeing it right now with the flip of a wrist. They just write one memo and it's happened. So again, just highlighting how arbitrary the system is showing itself to be right now. But even though a lot of these, a lot of things are happening that we're really pushing against, like the judges' work, there's a lot of good things that are also happening. We, at an unprecedented level, are organizing healthcare workers. There are tons of people inside the LA County jails providing healthcare to people in the jails. And there's a ton of them that are also working in the jails outside, supporting our community members. And both of those groups of healthcare workers have come up and demanded that LA County do something about the horrible policies inside the jails right now around COVID-19. They're getting exposed. There's a nurse that works in the LA County jail systems that just died. We are not getting accurate numbers of the actual COVID cases inside. We know that there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the jails currently under quarantine. But what we know, quarantine is not, quarantine like you and I do it, like from our living room, right? The quarantine in the jails is solitary confinement. And quarantining in the jails is literally not having access to, being able to take a shower, even to call their loved ones. And so there's a lot that we're pushing around the sheriff to move as well. There's a lot of policies and laws that have passed that have given, like, the sheriff, the judges, the DAs pretty much unlimited discretion on how to act during an emergency. And so what Justice LA has been doing is that we hold text banks and phone banks every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, where we take different actions on things. For example, today we just did an action around sharing a video that was created around healthcare workers and the campaign around lifting care not cages on healthcare workers. Last week we did one around the judges. And so there are real concrete steps that folks can take to help free our people and to help ensure that the system actors take the appropriate steps. And just so folks know, like, right now, there's a lot of tying in of city, county, and state strategy, because right now is budget season. So the state is determining what will its budget be. The county is also beginning to determine what its budget will be. And at the local level, the city attorney and LAPD and other local law enforcement need to be held accountable. So we're working with them to make sure that they're not creating policies like we've heard of people getting fined for walking around not wearing a mask, or people walking too close to each other. We're actually seeing people get fined and cited for these things. So, but it's all tied in together, because if less people go into the jails, then that's happening locally. The more people that get out of the jails, that's happening at a county level. And the money that we need to invest and create an alternative system of care and housing is going to come mostly from the state. So there's a lot of opportunities to plug in. But right now, in this moment, is really where the policies of the future are being developed. So this arraignment extension from 48 hours to 7 days, that's a terrible policy that's being enacted right now that we cannot have seep, once we're out of this crisis. And so we're enacting great policy, but making sure that terrible policy that's going to, lead to people dying or leading to people getting incarcerated in the jails, that doesn't happen. Sorry if I went over my time.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much. So I do want to open it up to questions. But before that, is there a specific link you want to send folks to for the calls to action that you're talking about that Justice LA is doing?
Folks can check out our social media platforms. We're at Justice LA Now on Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook. And if folks want to send direct questions or emails to us, they can email us at we also have a website folks can check out. But yeah, again, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are these text banks and direct actions that we're taking. Oh, also, if folks want to check out the LA County report that we put together around alternatives.org.
Great, thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you. I think it was a lot of helpful information. I hope everybody finds something they can plug into today. I do have one question that I got that maybe one of you can just jump on it if you think that you have something for it. It's, do you all see any benefit in collaborating with carceral institutions such as probation and CDCR to address decarceration both during and after COVID-19? So I'll open that up to anyone who wants to respond.
When we developed the Alternatives to Incarceration report, it was literally us sitting next to the sheriff's department, the probate department, to draft these recommendations. But the recommendations were based on our values. And so our values are, one, we're not leaving nobody behind. Two, we're not going to build things that we'll have to destroy in the future. And so we walked in, and those are just some of our values, but we walked in to that room knowing that whatever was going to come out of this was going to be based on our values. And if you read the report and the recommendations, you'll see that instead of, for example, there was opportunities so that people would stop getting probation violations for not being able to check in, right? That was their recommendation. We went back and edited it and said, how about you reduce the number of times people have to do probation checking? Collaborate with these agencies. You have to really walk in the room not willing to compromise. I mean, they're for that. But if you already walk in with the mindset of we'll have to compromise, then you're already gonna, lose some. So I would say if you have to work with those institutions, just try to follow your values and try to push them as far as possible because they're always gonna try to piece of the pie.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. Anyone else want to join in on that? No? Okay. I didn't see any questions. Is there anybody who wants to raise a hand or anyone on the phone who wants to just go ahead and share their questions?
Yes, my name is Ava. I just wanted to thank all the speakers, but especially the last two presenters. I'm just in admiration. I'm a baby boomer myself, but in admiration about the wonderful work that such youth is doing. And I hope and pray that the dream of justice and fair treatment for everybody materializes. I come from a family of immigrants, and I'm a healthcare worker. I've worked in the Imperial Valley for many years, and the fear and the injustices that I see among people that are just seeking blood pressure medication or even diabetic medicine is really sad. And I hope we can restore normalcy with the next election. That's another story about voter registration and making sure people show up. But I hope and pray that all the wonderful endeavors that these two young presenters have just presented, in addition to all the others, do materialize. And I've been on your conference for seveval hours, and I've been enjoying every second. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? I have a question myself for Onisis. I was curious about how you're seeing jails respond to the no in-person visitations, because like you said, you're actually isolated. So how are jails responding to this lack of, any kind of contact?
Well, what we've seen is in LA County is that the sheriff has given each per week, which is not enough. We used to host action events outside of Men's Central Jail and the women's jail, and I can't tell you how many times that we've seen the same family members go. It's not like it's new people all the time. It's literally like these parents come every COVID is having on this disruption of family connection is terrible, but the reaction by the jails has also been terrible because 2 phone calls, 5 minutes each is not worth. It's not enough to make sure that people's mental health and stability stays solid. And so there's much more that the sheriff can do around increasing the time that people have access to call their loved ones. But also in some of the prisons, we're seeing that folks are getting more access to free phone calls. They're just not being public about it. We've hosted phone calls. And so we've seen that there has been an increase, but not in LA County and not at the level that we want to see it.
Thanks. I do see one more question. Let's see. It says, I know in Canada, it's from Emma Lang. I know in Canada that one of the civil liberties orgs is collecting info for a potential suit against governments regarding fines. Anything similar happening in California or in the US?
Is the question around, are there any policies that are creating punishments for not wearing a mask or going into a place without a mask?
They've been fining people $700, so that's a lot for if you violate any of the social distancing laws, and it's been primarily targeting working class folks or folks in denser urban areas where parks have been closed, but there's you can't go out. Anyone who's aware of similar policies to fight against it? The moment it's developing here, they're collecting data.
I know that folks are collecting data and stories here, particularly from the ACLU, at least in Southern California, because we've seen litigation for being on a beach, but actually physically assaulting them. And so there are more and more stories coming out like that in California and in LA about people just getting fined for walking down the street too close, for being at a beach that might be closed by themselves. But I don't know any action right now against that, other than there is data collection and story collection happening now to, I think, put something forward.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say that, like Eunice's just said, our office has been working in collaboration with other community partners to collect these stories. And in addition to seeing this happen in LA, we've also seen it happen in NorCal. And people getting pulled over because they're driving and being asked to confirm that they're an essential worker and give a letter, provide a letter from their employer saying that they are an essential worker. And so these are stories that we've gotten and we've collected, but I don't know if we're at the ask stage yet.
Thank you, both of you. I don't see any other questions. I have, let's see. I see something from Vivian. Could we hear about successes in getting people who are COVID positive out of jails and detention?
We don't know of anybody who has had COVID-19 and gotten out of the jails. The sheriff has mentioned that there's 2 people who have gotten COVID-19 and have recovered in the jails. That's what he said. We don't know how accurate that is. But what we do know is that there isn't enough testing happening in the jails to even know who has it. And because of this lack of testing, many folks who are eligible for release are not getting released because they don't have placements. And a lot of reentry programs are not taking in folks because they don't know if folks are coming out with COVID-19. And so they're getting essentially just stuck in the jails in quarantines, in solitary confinement. So that's another thing that we're really pushing for there to be a series of policies established around protecting healthcare workers inside, but also getting testing more done throughout the county jail system, so we could get folks released and into housing and programs that have spots available.
And in the detention, in detention centers, I don't know if anyone of the folks that have been released, I don't know if any of them had been tested positive for COVID-19. Some have displayed some symptoms of COVID-19 or have been around folks who have displayed symptoms. People are not being tested for COVID-19. but there have been the people who have been released, some judges, it's kind of like a hit or miss. Some judges have released folks in detention centers along the CDC guidelines of who is medically vulnerable, and other judges have just released people without, who just may be vulnerable in general, but not, we're not seeing adequate testing of folks inside of detention centers. And actually when people are, and testing is not really happening unless people are being arrested in community, and the extent of the testing is that they just for 2 weeks. And even people who are transferred, for example, from like Mesa Verde to Yuba County Jail, they're not being tested. And so even if they were exposed to folks inside of Mesa Verde who may have COVID-19, when they're transferred to Yuba County Jail or vice versa in-house, and we know that like other folks who even work at these detention centers aren't being tested either, and they are out in the community and can very well be carriers and bringing it into the detention center. So that's very problematic.
Thank you both. I don't see any more questions, but just to wrap it up, if anyone wants to finish with a call to action that you or your organization would like to get out to all the folks listening right now, now would be the time.
I would just want to add in that our coalition is made up of a lot of organizations doing tremendous work. Where we need a lot of support in is getting probation to release young people from probation camps. So if you could please follow Youth Justice Coalition on their social media platforms, and really support the work that they're doing, please do. Follow Justice LA. We're doing a lot of work on base building and taking direct action via Zoom calls and other meetings that we're hosting. So please follow a couple organizations, Frontline Wellness Network, who are leading the efforts on organizing healthcare workers, need a lot of support in uplifting their demands. So just feel free to go on our website or our social media and you can connect with all those orgs. But it's literally like you can get in where you fit in. There's different advocacy points that people can get into. Thank you for the time and for listening to us.
Thank you. Vivian, if you want to rejoin us to kind of close, thank you again so much to everybody, all the panelists. It was really helpful and I'm really glad you all were able to make it via Zoom.
This is Vivian. My video is not wanting to go on. I've been here listening to you and I wanted, oh, there it is. Thanks everyone. You just were so helpful in addressing the questions that our students, our campus, our communities are asking. And this has been a really important session as well as the other ones. I want to thank each and every one of you for making some time in your day to provide all this information. I know it's not easy to show up in every day to do this, but just even from the chat, I know that people really appreciated it, as well as the comments that the speakers made, that the participants made. Well, thank participants as well for showing up and bringing yourselves to the space. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll meet again. Thank you. Thanks, Andi, for doing a great job moderating. And Jorge, I don't know if you're there either. You did a great job. Thanks, Andi. Bye-bye.